present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. Once again, I will ask our four contestants to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, of course, without repetition, of course, and without deviating from the subject, of course, and without saying, of course, as I've just said it. And of course, according to how well they do this, they will gain points or lose them. And let us begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, are you ready?
Yes.
I thought for a moment he'd fallen asleep before we started. Clement Freud, the subject is waiting rooms. Would you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
When I go and see my dentist, he has a waiting room, and the house in which he practices is what is called mixed. That is to say, there is a psychiatrist, a hypnotist, an acupuncture expert, and a physiotherapist and a veterinary surgeon, which does make the waiting room into the most exciting place. A man recently came in with a goose and had a long conversation with a woman who was unable to touch her left knee with her right elbow, to the consternation of almost everyone. But when it comes to teeth, especially molars and occasionally incisors, but I wouldn't say wisdom were totally out of it, then the practitioner whom I visit is perhaps the most brilliant. As for the magazines which abound in the waiting room, as well as Sunday papers, journals, and news...
Sheila Hancock was challenged with 1/2 second to go.
Oh, did I? Well, let him go on then. I thought he hesitated, but he didn't.
Yeah, very good time to challenge.
It was a good time to challenge. It was a good attempt, but I disagree. He didn't hesitate. He kept going with this unutterable rubbish about this waiting room.
Yes.
Which was very entertaining. 1/2 second on waiting room, Clement, starting now.
98.4.
So, Clement Freud started with the subject, he finished with the subject, he kept going except for the 1/2 second. He's the only one who scored any points at the end of that round. That is the only one who's spoken almost. So he's obviously in the lead. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject is digging peat. Could you talk about digging peat for 30 seconds or 60 seconds? What did you put in that water I had? Yeah, 30 seconds and then another 30 seconds if you can, starting now.
Well, peat is a wonderful substance because you can burn it on the fire or you can put it in the soil and help the garden to develop and grow things in more easily. Now, digging it is quite a problem. They do it actually in Shropshire, where I come from. There's a huge area called Wixel Moss, where this peat is dug in huge squares, blocks, and it's lifted onto barrows, taken to carts, and then it is distributed all over Great Britain. All over Great Britain.
You shouldn't have gone back, and you could...
No, I meant to say the United Kingdom.
I know, you said the Great Britain, which was lovely. And then so he tried to get it right, and he knew they were all watching like hawks and lynxes, and Sheila Hancock got in first. And Sheila, your challenge?
Deviation.
Right, 29 seconds, digging peat, starting now.
Well, I dig Pete Murray quite a lot. He's an attractive chap. Tall he is, with nice sun, and a cheerful voice and disposition. Altogether, I dig him very much indeed. Also...
Kenneth Williams.
We've had two digging very muches.
Yes.
Yeah, but digging Pete, you see, is the subject on the card. So
But should I dig him very much?
Oh, that's right. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right,
say,
Kenneth.
do
You
pull
have
yourself
12
together,
seconds on digging Pete, starting now.
This is something largely indulged in air. The Irish have a lot.
Clement Freud.
Deviation, it's called cutting peat in error.
Well, look, Kenneth Williams talks about digging peat, even if they talk about cutting peat in error. So that's the way he refers to it, and we know exactly what he's talking about, and that's the subject on the card. And there are 5 seconds. Continue, Kenneth, starting now.
The time to do it is when you put out a wee bowl of milk for the green man, and he comes around...
Sheila Hancock.
Who's dared to challenge?
Deviation, it's a load of rubbish. You don't put down a bowl of milk
Do
for a
you
little
think fairies
Kenny,
and gnomes and elves are a load of rubbish? Is that what you think?
Yes.
No, she doesn't. She thinks it's a load of rubbish to put it out when you're digging peat or cutting it. That was her challenge, and I agree with that. And you have 1 second on digging peat, starting now.
Peat Jones is one of my favourites.
Well, at the end of that round, a very even contest. Sheila, your turn to begin. The subject is catching a bus. Would you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
Well, I should think to do this you would need a very large net. And perhaps you would climb up to the top of Trafalgar Square, Nelson Column, and cast it over the buses passing by, and loop it over the engine and the back, and then lift it to the top of the column again, and say...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of column.
Yeah, I did say again, you see.
There are 40 seconds, Clement, on catching a bus, starting now.
This is a colloquial name given to getting on to an omnibus, which in London is red, and I believe has 2 decks, although I do not have personal experience of such a mode of transport. I seem to remember...
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Well, let me inform you, they don't all have 2 decks. You occasionally have 1 deck of red buses in London.
Yes, but it doesn't matter. He said there were buses in London which are
Well,
red.
I
and there were
didn't
2
like
decks.
his patronising manner of Never even been near enough to a bus to know for sure whether it had got 1 deck or 2. I mean,
Here, here.
ludicrous.
I didn't like his
Is
patronising
he in an
manner
ivory
either.
tower somewhere and he can't
It's
see
better than
the...
climbing up Nelson's column and throwing a net over it. For stark realism.
Maybe a lot of us didn't like his patronising manner, but he wasn't deviating from the subject. There are 23 seconds, Clement, for you to continue on catching a bus, starting now.
In order to facilitate the catching of buses, signs are put up on pavements, some of which say stop and others request, meaning that only if the person holds up his left or possibly right hand will the driver of the vehicle slow down and come to a halt in order to take on humanity desirous of using that vehicle to go...
So in future, you know that if you get in a bus, you're humanity desirous of using a vehicle. Right, Clement Freud, with his eloquence, continued and went into the lead at the end of that round. Clement, it's your turn to begin again. The subject is my hobby. Would you talk about that for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
The extraordinary thing is that my hobby is catching buses. I stand on pavements in towns and villages.
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Deviation. He's already said he doesn't ever travel on
Yes,
buses.
I quite agree, Sheila. Therefore, it cannot
I
be...
don't have enough time to indulge the hobby.
You can't wriggle out of it that way, Clement. I'm going to give it to Sheila Hancock, and she has 53 seconds on my hobby, starting now.
I haven't got one.
Has Clement Freud got in again?
Hesitation.
Hesitation is correct, and Clement, you have the subject back. 51 seconds, my hobby, starting now.
Flying a kite is something that I have a tremendous preponderance for. Proclivity, I would have said, only it's a word which Kenneth Williams likes to keep for himself later in the program. You sit on a bench, ideally in a park, holding on to a piece of string at the end of which, at ever increasing or occasionally decreasing distances, is this box made of sawdust, wood, paper, cloth. And the wind is...
Jones is challenged.
You can't make a kite of sawdust.
Yes, you can.
How?
Sawdust is made into a sort of plastic material, which is usually what kites are made of.
Yes, but
It is made of
the
sawdust.
picture you're quite right, Clement. The picture
Thank
you conveyed was
and
that
you
the kite
then
went up
go
made of
to
sawdust.
Parliament Hill
On top of
Fields
it,
or Regent's
drove away.
Park. Sit.
Get a point for an incorrect challenge. You have 22 seconds left. My hobby, starting now.
Wind is incredibly important for this, because if the weather is clement, there isn't much hope of the thing going up to the levels at which it gives you total pleasure, let alone...
Sheila Hancock.
Blatant hesitation.
I'm not surprised. There are 7 seconds, Sheila, for you on my hobby, starting now.
My hobby has suddenly become playing the piano because I have got to...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Earlier on, she said to this entire house that she hasn't got a hobby.
said
Now
it's
she's saying that my hobby is playing the piano. Loads of rubbish. I mean, such blatant
I said it
lying.
suddenly become.
She
I
did say
take it
su-
up right this minute.
Well, it's suddenly become.
She's got a lovely piano made of sawdust, which is the basic material.
Which is going to fly.
From now on, my hobby is playing the piano.
That's
You
going to
don't
be
know the difference between tonic so far and the 12-tone scale.
I don't.
No, but her proclivities are all in the right.
She's a coruscator. She's not a Oh, I can't.
Sheila Hancock, I think you made your point very clearly, and there are 4 seconds for you to continue on my hobby starting now.
I'm going to enjoy it very much when I get home and open the...
Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Another historical subject that Ian Messer has decided upon for you. Heraclitus, would you talk about that for 60 seconds starting now?
A very complicated subject to be given to discuss in 60 seconds. I would have thought something more simple. However, he was a native of Ephesus, which was one of those golden cities, which was the product of that marvelous Hellenic Renaissance, which was so beautifully touched upon in Gates of Asia, and began his own school of philosophy there, called the Ionian. And he is 500 BC, and propagates this incredible theory of dynamic monism, that what appears to be unity is in fact the warring tension between opposite factions. This idea that there can be such an extraordinary amount of volatile fluidity between, say, hot and cold, heat and warmth, love and hate.
The audience obviously enjoyed it so much. Would you give us a repeat performance, please? Kenneth, you get 2 points because you started with the subject and finished without being interrupted, but I'm afraid you're still in 3rd place. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject is calling the plumber. So would you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
This is something best done, really, on the telephone, which is why it's best to have it always on a very...
Clement Freud got in first.
Repetition of best.
Yes, there are 55 seconds for you, Clement, on calling the plumber, starting now.
Calling the Plumber is one of the most famous of the square dances. First,
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, he did. They all laughed and he hesitated. And there are 48 seconds for you, Sheila, on calling the plumber, starting now.
Well, I usually shout, "Plumber!" and then he answers and comes across the road and mends
Kenneth
my...
Williams has challenged.
It is impossible. I have seen her house, and it's quite impossible if she did scream out plumber that he would immediately come across the road. Quite impossible.
Well, she
The
can
whole thing
still
is a tissue
shout
of
out-
lies, and he's got to come a long way to do it. And it's absolutely lies, and I'm not going to sit here and listen to it.
Listen, she was not technically deviating because the plumber might even have been passing up the street and she opened the window and called out plumber and he came in. So it is quite possible, therefore, she's not being devious and she keeps the subject.
he could
Another
have been
point
on a
to
bus, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, top of a double-decker bus. Then Jen should have thrown a net out over him. There are 43 seconds on calling the plumber, Sheila, starting now.
And he brings these long pipes called a snake and shoves them down my drain and unbungs it for me pretty regularly because it does seem to get filled with leaves often. However, he is also good at making the lavatory flush when it should do and making washers go on the taps and water flow from them and fill the basin wherewith we wash. Hot, cold, warm, whatever you like, the shower will be adjusted to because when I have called the plumber, he arranges it to flow out on my head and my shower cap
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation. It can't flow out of her head.
Once the water's on her hair, it'll flow out of it, won't it?
Did I say
It won't
flow out?
flow out.
No, it won't flow out. You're quite right. But she did repeat flow anyway. There are 9 seconds on calling the plumber with you, Clement, starting now.
Eustace Millhouse is the name that I shout when I need a plumber, because he was when his father and mother took him to the christening ceremony.
Once again, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, and he gained that extra point, of course, and he's increased his lead over Sheila Hancock. But Sheila, we're back with you to start, so would you talk on the subject now of credit for just a minute, starting now?
This is something I don't get much of at the bank. It's usually debit in black writing. However, when one does, it's a lovely feeling because it means you have saved a few pennies for your future, and that is indeed very important because...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation is not important at all, because money's losing its value every week, so if you're saving, you're not doing yourself any good at all. I mean, it's rubbish. She's telling people all this rubbish.
Well, she has very high plumber's bills.
She's a very high plumber's bill.
And she must have a... Kenneth, are you all right?
Yeah.
Where were we? Who challenged? Oh, yes, you challenged on something, didn't you, Kenneth?
Have you forgotten, honestly, Nicholas?
You challenged on the fact that it wasn't important to save.
Yes.
I think on the whole it probably is better to save something. If people saved a little and invest a little, the economy might be stronger. Sheila, you have a point for an incorrect challenge. The subject is credit, starting now.
If you buy something in a shop and when you get home decide you don't like it or it's too large for yourself or the person for whom you purchased it, then you return it to the said establishment and they perchance will give you a credit note, which means that you can take it home and that...
Clement Freud.
Repetition of home.
Oh.
Yes, I'm afraid so, Sheila. So Clement has another point. He has the subject, 25 seconds credit. Clement, starting now.
If you have 25 seconds credit, it means that for that period of time, you have every justification to bore your audience.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of have.
Oh, that's a tiny word. You can't. I mean, now, look here. I mean, I often do the odd have or unhave.
Well, his last challenge to Sheila was home, which is exactly the same length of word.
It's the same length of word, but one is a noun and the other one's a small verb, which
Oh,
we
well, that's
often-
an interesting new rule. Nouns are all right and verbs
I
aren't. Is
did
that
not
right?
say it was a rule.
Don't get involved, Nick. Don't get involved, Nick.
I've got to establish it's not a rule, but as it was a correct one, I have to give it to you, but we do resist the temptation sometimes on the haves. Right, Peter, you have 18 seconds on credit, starting now.
Credit where it is due. Now, that is a boring cliché.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of is.
Hoist with your own petard! You've been hoist, you see, with your own petard!
I hope Clement has brought home to you the point I was trying to make, and I hope this will be a lesson to you both. There are 14 seconds on credit, starting now.
One of the most odious aspects of life in this country at the moment is the credit card, whereby people are encouraged to purchase things which they don't really need simply because a piece of cellophane bearing their name and a number.
Peter Jones.
That is not the most odious aspect of life in this country
One
today.
Yeah.
He said one of.
One of.
It isn't even one of them.
No.
Oh, it depends on your
Prohibited.
proclivities, doesn't it? I mean, it depends on your attitude. It could be, to Clement, one of the most odious.
Odious?
So, he's entitled to say it, and he's not deviating from the subject of credit. And I must be fair and say he has 1 second on credit, starting now.
No.
Shop.
And I think the listeners will realise why they do resist the temptation sometimes to challenge on very small words, because otherwise we might never get going. Clement, we're back with you to start. The subject is pawns, and would you talk about them?
Just what?
Pawns.
Good gracious.
Those little things that stand in front of the king and the queen and the knight and the rook and the castle on a chessboard. And elsewhere, if you want. 60 seconds with you, Clement, starting now.
A few weeks ago in Oxfordshire, I went into a restaurant, picked up the menu and saw pawn cocktail, 4 and 6pence. How do you create this confection? I inquired of the head waiter. And he explained that you took 18 fish and marinated them overnight in red wine before adding a mayonnaise fashioned of egg yolk, oil, tomato ketchup, Tabasco, and other condiments. Surely you mean prawn.
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Well, I may be ignorant, but is it ketchup?
No, I don't think it's...
Is it ketchup?
But the trouble is, I'm in a cleft-sticker game because this ignoramus put down pawns instead of prawns, and he used red wine as
Yes.
So he might well have said ketchup.
Ketchup, yes.
So what do we do?
Reported speech.
I see.
It's reported speech. Oh, well, that's very good.
The
No
subject,
points scored. Clement Freud keeps the subject. He has 27 seconds on pawns, starting now.
If you ever see a bus and you look on the top deck, you're almost bound to see pawns sitting there, 2 by 3 and then 4, with 18 standing towards the rear, ready to pull a chain.
Peter Jones.
You won't find 18 people standing on top of a bus.
No, you
They're
won't.
not allowed to.
Peter, you have a correct challenge. There are 13 seconds on pawns, starting now.
That's what I feel sometimes. We are mere pawns, being pushed around by politicians and civil servants and all these other people in Whitehall who are just using us as if it were some ghastly game in which...
Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Ah, yes, what a good idea. Let's have the subject of fun. With you, Kenneth, to start. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, generally, you've got to be in the mood for it. I always think it's no good imagining you can just come out with it. I think you need good preparation, don't you? I mean, if you're going to go in and do the odd joke or two, like, you know, what time, how long...
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Well, it's sort of hesitation.
It wasn't
and
much fun, was it?
repetition.
I agree with your challenge, Sheila. You have 42 seconds on fun, starting now.
I think it is such fun playing Just a Minute with these lovely boys being so kind to me, being generous and helpful, so that I always talk for 60 seconds or 30. Sometimes Nick asked us to speak for as a mistake. And I
Kenneth
love...
Williams is challenged.
I beg your pardon, I was just having fun.
So give him a bonus point because he was having fun, and fun is the subject on the card. We leave the subject with Sheila. She has 23 seconds on fun, starting now.
Can't think of anything to say. I don't seem to be having much fun lately. I'm up in the middle of the night with a screaming baby saying, "Get up, I want to be fed," and nappies all over
Peter
the
Jones is
place.
challenged.
No, that's absolute rubbish, because it was only last week when you told us what a marvellous baby it was.
Yes.
No, sir.
Peter, we agree with your challenge. The audience...
Oh, what an outrage.
And there are 13 seconds for you on fun, starting now.
Fun is something that none of us are getting enough of, and I think we all ought to take our clothes off and get bottles of champagne and distribute them up and down Whitehall and all round this area, up and down the embankment.
And Sheila Hancock is
Repetition
challenged.
of up and down.
It's up and down.
Well, we'd be going up and down a hell of a lot if we were all with our clothes off and distributing bottles of champagne.
Well, if I had bottles of champagne, I wouldn't give them up and down Whitehall. I'd keep a few for myself. And this nice audience who've been such fun. Because we only have 1 second left, and 1 second left in this game. And we have had fun, haven't we? Oh, you are sweet. Why don't you take it? I'm going to give the last second of the show to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, you have 1 second, all of you together, to talk on the subject of fun, starting now. Technically, of course, that last point should have gone to Sheila Hancock, because in 1 second she wouldn't have been interrupted, so she gets the points for speaking when the whistle went, and she almost made it. I'm going to give you the final result. Kenneth Williams and Peter Jones were equal in third place. They were quite a way behind Sheila Hancock, who was only 1 point behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd.
present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Andree Melly in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we welcome Andree Melly back to the fourth seat, or the guest seat, against our three regular competitors of the game. As usual, I'll ask them to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. Let us begin the show this week with Andree Melly. And Andree, the subject is Niagara Falls. Would you talk for just a minute, if you can, on that subject, starting now?
Niagara Falls, I believe, is one of the wonders of the world. I haven't actually seen them, but a lot of people go every year, thousands of tourists. On one side is Canada and the other America, and all this water gushes over hundreds of feet and falls below. And what I have seen is a certain gentleman called Blondin in kind of rather wrinkly, woolly tights, photographs of him, who I believe did cross these falls on a tightrope in 1800 and something or other. He must have been extremely brave, and I think he did all sorts of feats while he was up there. Other people have gone in barrels over there, haven't they?
Derek Nimmo.
I think she'd like me to speak.
I think you're right. She hesitated and you got in first, Derek Nimmo. You have a point for a correct challenge. You have 17 seconds in which to talk on Niagara Falls, starting now.
I have a very quaint sense of humour, you know. Some of you perhaps might have noticed that I have a little pond in my garden, and into my little stream goes down, which I call Niagara Falls. It's very tight. It's frozen at this time of the year, and the goldfish are blocked in blocks of ice at the bottom. I feel so sorry for them. I go out with a little blow lamp and squirt them.
Well, our whistle, as you know, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains the extra point. It was, of course, Derek Nimmo, who at the end of that round is the only one who scored any points. Clement Freud, you've yet to speak. Will you start the next subject, please? Household pests. Would you talk on that for just a minute, if you can, starting now?
Household pests is what any adenoidal child would call a dog, a cat, a goldfish, a hamster, even a rabbit. And yet, more correctly, household pests, I suppose, would be spiders and earwigs, bugs, rats, mice. And I'm not sure why I'm here, because we have all that sort of thing at home, and there was no need for me to come out to this studio where they keep the audience waiting.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation, discussion with the audience is nothing to do with household pests.
I would agree with that challenge of deviation, Kenneth. So you have a point, and you have 28 seconds on household pests, starting now.
I suppose these are things like your mosquitoes or your blue bottles that come in and settle on your actual luncheon, and the other crawlies that do appear from under the carpet. I understand these are bugs which go for anything which is woolen material, and you best sprinkle your DDT.
And,
oh, that's a disgrace. How can you say it's repetition? It's a name, isn't it, DDT? You can't say that's repetition. You couldn't say it without saying it. I mean, it's repetition. Who challenged me?
Derek Nimmo got in first.
I might have known you would. It's the sort of cheap trick you'd stoop to, isn't it? After listening to all that rubbish about you having Niagara Falls in the garden, which is a load of lies. Lies. Frozen over, indeed. There's one thing that's frozen over with him, mate.
Derek had a correct challenge, and he was the first to get in on the repetition.
What was his correct challenge? Please explain it to me. I'd like to know.
Repetition of DD.
You accept that, do you? That DDT is repetition?
Absolutely accept it.
I see.
100%.
What a rotten chairman, isn't he?
When I go against you, I'm a rotten chairman. When I give a decision for you, I'm the best chairman in the world.
Well, that's when I'm mad in my mind, isn't it?
Derek, you have 3 seconds on household pests, starting now.
Ants in my pants.
Hesitation, I'm afraid.
No. Derek, you have 2.5 seconds on household pests, starting now.
Silver worms are very nice.
Definitely looking at the house, playing to the whole thing for the house instead of the night.
I know exactly the same as you do, Kenneth. 2 seconds on household pests, Derek, starting.
Sometimes I find bugs in my sausage and I don't like them there at all.
said
With the
I
help
before the
of
whistle
Kenneth
went.
Williams' ridiculous challenges,
Very
Derek
strange
Nimmo
chairman.
has increased his lead at the
Really
end of
odd.
that round. Shut up, Derek Clement. Derek, it's your turn to begin, actually. The subject is drink. Can you talk on that for just a minute, starting
And
now?
our Lord said, take a little wine for thy stomach's sake. What very sound advice. And I have gone with it through my whole life.
Kenneth Williams.
Hesitation. With through. I've gone with through. I've gone with through.
All right, I heard it. Kenneth, you have 52 seconds on drink, starting now.
Well, I don't really know much about drink. I had the odd glass of champagne.
Andree and Melly.
A repetition of 2 odds there immediately.
Yes, I'm afraid so. Andree, we hear from you now with 47 seconds on drink, starting now.
I like drink, and sometimes I have one on my own in the evening when I've got the children to bed, to sit down with that great glass and ice clunking away. You might think I was an alcoholic. Not at all. 2 is perhaps my maximum. And I'm very cheap if you take me to a pub because I like beer. Well, I mean...
Kenneth Williams.
Hesitation.
Yes, hesitation. Kenneth, and you have a point for that, and 26 seconds on drink, starting now.
Well, I think a port and lemon is very refreshing, especially if you've got just...
Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
20 seconds on drink, Clement, starting now.
Yes.
He didn't start.
He didn't start, no. Andree, you have the subject. You have 19 seconds on drink, starting now. Derek, you challenge.
You haven't started.
No, all right. 18 seconds on drink, Derek, starting.
Lacrima Christi, the tears of Christ, grown on the mountain of Vesuvius, on the foothills thereof. How delicious the kind of volcanic flavour. And then from Frascati.
Clement Freud, a challenge.
Hesitation.
I would agree. I don't know what he's talking about either. Drink up. But it was hesitation. Clement, you have 5 seconds on drink, starting now.
I recently bought a home winemaking kit and was therefore able to produce claret...
Well, the subject of drink got them all some points. And Kenneth, your turn to begin. The subject, a very good one for you, which I hope you will take to heart. Keeping control. Can you talk about keeping control, Kenneth, for just a minute, starting now?
I used to do this very successfully in the Far East, where I was a sergeant of engineers. I would frequently line up the platoon and say, come on, lads, let's be a good heart and clean out this naffy efficiently. And they always replied, why don't you drop dead? And I found the only way you could possibly achieve the sort of disciplinary atmosphere that was absolutely essential for the production of a fighting unit is to use your volume. Rally and inherit and look out, left, head out. And then they all lift the chin. And there is renewed respect. The eye sparkles as the command and the note of this authoritative voice. You will notice I changed the expression there very cunningly.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of cocoa.
I'll just explain the. I think what his tactics were that he knew the time was almost up, and it wasn't anything he could think of, so he just said cocoa. I disagree with cocoa, and Kenneth, you keep the subject. 6 seconds, keeping control, starting now.
I was posted to Hong Kong, where the officer commanding said you are one of the most outstanding NCOs in this area.
Well, Kenneth Williams started with the subject, he finished with the subject, he got an extra point for doing so. We've learned a lot about his army life, and all those people told him to drop dead as a sergeant. Andree, will you begin the next round? The subject is sales. Will you talk on them for just a minute, starting now?
Sales are something I try to avoid because I never seem to get bargains. Last year I went for a winter coat and came out with a silver lamy catsuit, which I didn't really need at all. Living on a farm in the middle of Sussex amongst cornfields, I don't quite know when I'm going to wear it. Pillowcases, they're all right, and sheets, but then I never know what the price ought to be, so I I can't tell whether they're less than they were when you first...
Kenneth Williams.
I thought hesitation.
And I think you were correct, and you have 25 seconds on sales starting now.
I have, unfortunately, been mixed up in these affairs and been shoved from pillar to post in the process. And I had to go back and complain to the manager. I said, I've got bruises I could show you in places that would require a certain degree of privacy.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Hesitation.
No. He was very quiet, but he was still being private. And there are 14 seconds to continue on sales, Kenneth, starting now.
Come round the back and let's have a look. So, rub on the witch hazel. And I said yes, but...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Deviation, he's got a long way away from sales.
Well, I thought he was still at the sale having the witch hazel rubbed on around the back. Is that not right? Oh, he doesn't
Yes,
think...
I'm sorry, I didn't realise you were referring to me, Nicholas.
Yes. You don't often speak to me like that, Kenneth. What's the thought of all that witch hazel or something?
Yeah, I just thought I'd lost the subject and I'd given up.
Perfectly honest, were you at the sale having the witch hazel rubbed on?
Oh, that was the flight of imaginative fancy, of course. Yes.
Then you were deviating.
Why?
Because you got away from sales. What's witch hazel having a rub?
If I'd got bashed in a sale, it's perfectly reasonable to have a bit of witch hazel rubbed on the bruise, isn't it?
I suppose so, yes. Keep the subject.
I mean...
6 seconds, starting now.
Lashed before the mizzenmast, my sails were set in the wrong direction, and I had to catch...
Kenneth, you will be delighted to know that at the end of that round, you have taken the lead.
Oh, thank goodness. At least
Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, lampposts. Would you talk about them for just a minute if you can, starting now?
Lampposts are something which concern me a great deal because I have a dog who needs them desperately, especially on cold winter mornings when we take him for a walk. And the poor old chap runs from one lamppost to another lamppost, looking only for the third lamppost before he gets the fourth in his sights, as it were. And I don't mean the word figuratively, but much more metaphorically or literally, quietly, gently, and in many parts wholly distributively. What am I saying?
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
I was rambling to a hollow as a head station.
Yes.
The subject wasn't adjectives.
Thank you.
Kenneth, a hesitation, and you have 25 seconds on lamppost starting now.
The Victorian Society have done much for London in preserving the loveliest examples of these, which to be found perhaps not only on the Victoria and Albert embankment, but the Constitution Hill, a route not very favourable with pedestrians, but a lovely yellow kind of lamp signs.
Well, lamppost kept Kenneth Williams going till the whistle went. He gained the extra point. He's increased his lead. Derek, your turn to begin again. The subject, mannerisms. Can you talk on those for just a minute, starting now?
Well, people have all kinds of different mannerisms. I suppose one would awfully think of artists as a mannerist style, perhaps. Very attractive, I find it curious that people don't. But when one looks at old Parsons there, I'm just playing for time, but if you've noticed, I then see a man who is filled with mannerisms. He's got a nasty, skulking kind of look about him. He's furtive and always hiding behind old raincoats and shabby corners of a freezing city. Kenneth laughs all the time. Old Freud crunches into his beard. And that does amuse me. But Andree Melly, for instance, now she has a very curious manner. Have you noticed the way she keeps taking her left finger and scratching the right nostril? Now that is something that she inherently...
Andree Melly has challenged.
Deviation. It's something I've never done.
No, that's why you don't notice. It's a mannerism. You don't notice with the mannerism.
There are 13 seconds on mannerisms with you, Andree, starting now.
Mannerisms are endearing or annoying according to whether you are devoted to the person concerned or not. And if you want to be...
Kenneth,
This is not true at all, because you can have the most terrible mannerisms and people will get on with you. They will admire all about it. Damn, what a mannerism.
Kenneth!
I think he's made his point.
Right, Kenneth, what was your point? What was your challenge?
Oh, it was all so boring. I've forgotten it.
Actually, I think the point you were making is that you don't like a person for their mannerisms, you like them irrespective
That's
of their
exactly what I meant, Nicholas, yes.
And so you have 5 seconds to continue on the subject of mannerisms starting now.
Well, mine are very peculiar, and people have said to me, perhaps your style formed by your mannerisms.
Kenneth was again speaking when the whistle went, and he's again increased his lead at the end of the round. And Kenneth, we're back with you, the subject, Eugenius IV. That is the historical character that Messit has thought of, because he knows your penchant for such subjects. Would you talk on it 60 seconds starting now?
Well, of course, you see, the great victory he achieved was at the Council of Ferrara, where he got the Paleologos, Emperor of Constantinople, John II, to sign a declaration of unity with Latin and Eastern churches. Unfortunately, they chucked him out of Rome because this council that was sitting at Basel, I realise I've said that
Andree,
word
Melly.
twice, but it's absolutely essential.
Yeah,
They must know anything about my history.
Andree, what was your challenge?
A repetition of council.
Yes, I agree. 35 seconds on Eugenius IV starting now.
Extremely difficult to talk for 35 seconds about this gentleman, but I will try as slowly as Kenneth Williams does occasionally. He was a pope who got the push because he published a lot of bull of the papal variety.
Clement Freud, a challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, and I would agree with the reasons perhaps why she hesitated. There are 17 seconds on Eugenius IV with you, Clement, starting now.
In my final year at school, when I was reading history, geography, Latin, my master once said to me, Eugenius IV, the third genius I had was a chap called Watkinson Minor. But Freud, C.R., of all the pupils...
Andree, your turn to begin. The subject, my bikini. Would you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
My bikini has seen better days. It's about 3 years old, and either it or I seem to have changed shape. So I feel that the time has come to discard it and have one of the one-piece variety. I did get one that was crocheted in Spain, looked very pretty, but when I went in the sea, it all ballooned out and became enormous, and the bottom half fell off. I saw after...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Deviation. The subject is my bikini, not my bikinis.
Oh, that's... no. Well, yes, she can talk about my bikini, meaning the one she's
Had
at
before,
the
that
moment,
one.
or had, or have. No, I think that's too subtle for words. Andree, you keep the subject. 36 seconds, Andree, on my bikini, starting now.
There must have been something in Spanish in very small print on the label which I couldn't read, saying a beautiful bikini, but never put it in the water, which does seem to me to rather go against the whole point of these particular garments. Lots of gorgeous girls just flout about on them on the beach, and the smaller they are, the more popular they appear. Black...
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
About small girls.
Deviation. The larger they are, the more popular they
Yes,
appear.
Clement, you have the subject. There are 13 seconds on my bikini for you, starting now.
When I bought my bikini, I had no idea of the trouble that I would have with the Spanish police when I wore it on the beach of Torremolinos. I went down one sunny morning, impervious to the worries of mankind, when this gendarme came along and said, "You have been speaking for well over a minute. Why can't you and your people blow a whistle and put an end to this?"
I must explain to the listeners, I felt the audience should know a bit more about Clement Freud's Bikini, so I stopped the ambassador putting his whistle in his mouth. That's why he went on so long, and that's why you heard uproar in the house. But Clement, yes, you got a point for speaking when the whistle went. You've now moved into second place, and Kenneth's still in the lead. And Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, odd people. Can you talk about some of those for just a minute, starting now?
I suppose if you were to ask me to speak on odd people, there's no one I would sooner bring to your attention than the chairman of this program, who gets joy out of stopping the idiot who invented it from blowing his whistle after 75 seconds, when by all rules and conditions of this match that should have been done, and the minute should have been declared well and truly over. But odd people there are. Why they should come onto this game is absolutely beyond me. He sits with a dirty Macintosh, hiding behind...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Deviation, I've never seen a dirty Macintosh on this.
How devious can you be? He was the one who accused me of having a dirty Macintosh. All right, so you have the subject, 20 seconds, odd people, starting now.
John Thistlethwaite Chewing Gum is a very odd fellow. I met him in the Outer
Kenneth Williams' a challenge.
There's nobody called Chewing Gum.
The subject is odd people.
Yeah, but I don't believe that anyone's as odd as to go around being called Mr. Chewing Gum.
Now, I think that is one of those impossible decisions to make, so I will
Oh, it's not impossible at all, you great nit. Haven't you ever come upon somebody called Mr. Chewing Gum? Of course you haven't.
But Derek's made a point about odd people. I'm going to put it to you to judge. If you think there is such an odd person as Mr. Thingamajig or Chewing Gum, then you cheer for Derek Nimmo, and if you disagree, you boo for Kenneth Williams, and you all do it together now. The Chewing Gum has it. Derek, you keep the subject 15 seconds, odd people, starting now.
I once went to Yugoslavia. I had a very fine time there. I met a shepherd. He took me into the hills. He was a very odd man. He said, would you like to come and look at my sheep? And I did, and you know, it was white and had big fur all hanging down right to the ground. And he got these scissors out and he cut it off.
Kenneth Williams,
no sheep has fur.
I agree. Wool, 1 second on odd people, starting now.
There aren't any even ones, so one has to.
Kenneth, again speaking when the whistle went, has again got that extra point, and he's got a very strong lead. And Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, humbugs. Can you talk about those for just a minute, starting now?
Oh, Nicholas Barton, he's a great big humbug. All yellow and black stripes all over, of course he is. But you can have them out of little paper bags. And I remember when I was very small, going to a little sweet shop and asking the man behind the counter, please, Mr. Jones, could I have a penny packet of humbugs? And he used to give them to me. And gosh, do you know, I used to shove one in the back of my mouth. And it's very difficult to hide them in the classroom, isn't it? Because you have to shove one underneath your tongue sometimes. Very difficult.
Andree Melly.
Repetition of 2 shoves and all that.
So Andree spotted it. She has 37 seconds to talk on humbugs, starting now.
The kind I like are those that come in a tin and you feel you're going to get them at the chemist. I'm not quite sure if you do or not. 4 or 5 are stuck together, and if you've got a very large mouth, you can put them all in at once. Frightfully bad they are for your teeth, but oh, they're irresistible. Much better than dolly mixtures or toffees, any kind of confectionery you can mention. Give me humbugs by the mountainful and the buckets.
Andree Melly, speaking when the whistle went, gained that extra point. I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute this week. A very interesting result. We have 3 equal in second place. Derek Nimmo, Andree Melly, and Clement Freud are all equal, but they are a full 10 points behind this week's winner, Kenneth Williams. You've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett.
we present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Sheila Hancock in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And we're delighted to welcome Sheila Hancock back into the fourth chair to compete against our three regulars of the game. And once again, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we'll begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, would you take the subject of getting round people and talk for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now?
It all depends, really, on the person that you're trying to get round. Now, if it was a lady, you might go along with some spearmint or some chewing gum, or if it was Sheila Hancock, it might be rather difficult to get round, to really come to think of it, actually. But normally, one would give her lemonade, because she doesn't drink anything alcoholic, and then she would be your friend for life, if not for a fortnight. And then one would take with you a sausage. Now, that's very important, because sometimes, if one meets the canine...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of some, he said. Yes. 3 times.
3 times, you're quite right, Clement, and you have a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, and there are 36 seconds left, starting now.
One of the best ways of getting around people is to take a fix on their left ear.
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
Deviation. The subject is getting round people, not around people.
Oh, a very subtle challenge, Sheila, and I think, well, he can start off about getting around people, even though the subject is getting round people. Oh. So, I know, let's put it to the wisdom of our audience.
No, let him have it.
No, already. If you agree with Sheila's challenge, would you cheer? And if you disagree, would you boo? And would you all do it together now? When the cheers stopped, the boo started, and when the boo stopped, the cheers went on. Sheila Hancock, they're on your side. They want to hear from you, and so you have 32 seconds, having gained a point for the correct challenge, getting round people, starting now.
Well, in order to get round people, it would be a good idea to advertise in the Times saying anybody who has dimensions of 60 inches round the middle, would they please apply? And then perhaps a few fat people would...
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
The Times don't take those sort of provocative advertisements.
Don't you believe it? Have
No
you
doubt.
read the personal column lately?
Put it to the audience.
But I have no doubt that if Sheila Hancock put the advertisement in the Times, they would take it. So, Sheila, we disagree with the challenge. We give you a point for a wrong one, and there are 18 seconds left on getting round people, starting now.
And at this moment, I would be delighted, because I would feel some sort of sympathy with them, as I, at the moment, am rather round myself. That is another place where you meet a lot of round people, at maternity clinics. Singularly round they are, even rounder.
And Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation, and good evening, everybody.
Well, it's nice to hear from everybody in the first round. And, Peter, you got in magnificently with only 1.5 seconds to go.
Oh, really?
You get a point for a correct challenge, and you start on getting round people, starting now.
Tu tantissimo se.
Just to remind anybody who may be new to a game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us, by the way, that 60 seconds is up, gets an extra point. It was Peter Jones on this occasion, so he's in the lead alongside Sheila Hancock at the end of the first round. Clement Freud, will you begin the second round? The subject is what I have in mind. Can you talk on that subject, about that subject? 60 seconds starting now.
What I have in mind is a radical approach to taxation. I think for so long, the wrong people have had to pay too much. And what I have in mind is a tax on hyphens. Anyone who has a hyphenated name will have to pay 100...
Peter Jones has challenged.
A repetition of tax.
Well, you try not repeating tax.
Well, I'm trying.
All right. But if you repeat tax in this program, it is incorrect. So, Peter, a correct challenge and a point to you, and 45 seconds left on what I have in mind, starting now.
Well, I happen to be on a diet at the moment, and so my mind tends to run on the subject of food. And I keep thinking of macaroni and spaghetti and tortatone and tagliatelle.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of pasta.
Derek, a good challenge, and I think the audience reaction tells us that you deserve a point for a game try, but as he wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, we leave the subject with Peter, who continues for 32 seconds. What I have in mind starting now.
Steak and kidney puddings with dumplings on the side is the kind of thing that my mind runs on at the moment, though later on...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Repetition about the moment.
Yes, that is correct, and you have a correct challenge now, Derek, and the subject. And there are 23 seconds on what I have in mind, Derek, starting now.
What I have in mind at the moment is to rush out into this fair city of Londinium, go along the Strand I'll go, and then turn down towards old Father Thames.
Clement Freud has
Who's
challenged.
Repetition of go, or go-go.
A correct challenge, Clement. You take the subject and a point. 15 seconds on what I have in mind, starting now.
What I have in mind is that if I were a more sporting player, I would not have interrupted Derek Nimmo when he was in full flow, racing down the Strand on the way to the city of Londinium, of which he is a native, as is Sheila Hancock, and her...
And Derek Nimmo has challenged you.
I'm not a native of London, I'm a native of Liverpool.
Liverpool.
And that we all know. Derek Nimmo, you got in with only 2 seconds left. What I have in mind, starting now.
What I have in mind is nothing like an alternative.
Derek Nimmo, speaking then when the whistle went, gained the extra point, and he's moved into the lead, 1 point ahead of Peter Jones and Clement Freud, and Sheila only 1 point behind in third place. Sheila, we've come round to you, your turn to begin. The subject, oh, this is a nice one for you. My opinion of the others. Can you talk about that? 60 seconds starting now.
I am going to be very wary about this subject in case I lose it and one of them has to give their opinion of me. Therefore, I will say that, starting with our chairman, Nicholas Parsons, he is an honest, upright, fair citizen.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Deviating, a load of rubbish. It's an absolute rubbish. He's a well-known cad and bounder.
Well, dear me, Derek Nimmo's challenge is an incorrect challenge, and for that...
I'm on a good wicket here.
Very good wicket. I keep all of it about the chairman if I were you. You get 2 points for that, Sheila. And, no, give her 1. I was only joking, really, because otherwise I'll get all those letters, won't I?
Lucky.
Sheila, you have 45
Still
seconds on my opinion of the others, starting now.
Not only that, but he is very good looking. And he has a very difficult task.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of very.
Rubbish! And then there are 40 seconds on my opinion of the others, Sheila, starting now.
And he is very quick on the bell and extremely...
Derek Nimmo challenged then.
Repetition of very.
Quite right, Derek. There are 30 seconds for you now, Derek.
I certainly agree as far as concerned. You are very, but I won't say any more. I think you are very, very.
Right. Well,
hello.
Hello.
I think he's very.
Derek Nimmo still has 30 seconds on my opinion of the others, starting now.
Well, there was Donald Lewthwaite and Bert Chimes, Fred Birkinshaw and Robert Coenstead, who came from Devon in a curious little hamlet called Muggleston-on-Flick. Now, perhaps you haven't heard of it, but that was one of the others that I first met when I joined the Salvation Army.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
I have heard of it.
Well, I hadn't until I just made it up, I can tell you.
So in that case, the only fair thing to do, Derek got a point for a clever challenge. We give 1 to Clement Freud for a clever challenge, leave the subject with Derek. And Derek, there are 10 seconds on my opinion of the others, starting now.
Nicholas Parsons, a great big oaf who sits up there all the time.
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Deviation, you're not.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Sheila has another well-deserved point, and there are 8 seconds, Sheila, on my opinion of the others, starting now.
Peter Jones I have known for many years, and my affection for him has grown with each passing month.
Well, to quote Sheila Hancock, she found a good wicket to bat on then. And for those foreigners in the audience, I say that's a cricket expression, which means that she's found a good place. I don't know what it means.
Face, Nick.
So, Sheila.
Are there many English-speaking people in the audience, by the way? Oh, good, because I would be reassured to know that.
Could you speak more slowly?
Sheila Hancock, you not only got a lot of points, you got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, so you're now in the lead, one ahead of Derek Nimmo. And Derek, it's your turn to begin. The subject, how it should be done. Would you talk for just a minute on that, starting now?
Very gently it should be done, I think. Otherwise, you might cause undue distress. One should always, in this life, try to be kind, considerate, good-natured. And in that case, when you have to do it, you will cause the minimum of dissatisfaction and the
Peter Jones challenge.
Hesitation.
Yeah, very clever, yes, because once he finally was repeating minimum, he hesitated.
Peter, you have mumbling.
You have 40 seconds on how it should be done, starting now.
They ought to clear out all these seats out of this theatre and put in tables and chairs and have a marvellous banquet for the audience and the performers before we start with a dozen champagne...
Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
No, you can't allow that, because the audience was so captivated by the idea that he couldn't speak through such a pandemonium of applause. So, Peter, we won't charge any points and tell you that you have 22 seconds to continue on how it should be done, starting now.
12 oysters apiece, and as I say, this bubbling liquid which would be in profusion everywhere, bottles for each person.
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Repetition of each person.
Yes, I think you said each before, Peter, and so there are 12 seconds left for how it should be done, Derek, with you, starting now.
In Hyde Park, after midnight, one should try to do it. Then, if you are caught by the...
Sheila Hancock is challenged.
If he does, he'll be arrested.
Sheila, we'll give you a point for a good challenge, because the audience applause shows us that, but as he wasn't, strictly speaking, deviating from the subject on the card, we have to leave it with Derek.
Anyway, it's closed after midnight.
No.
No, not all of it.
Well, you obviously find a sneaky way in. All the bits I know are closed. I know, because I once drove round and round because I couldn't get out. I got in.
Regent's Park.
No, they put great big things across the road in Hyde Park and you can't get out. You're trapped. I had to leave my car and climb under a gate.
What a fascinating life you do have, Sheila. So you were in it, right. But anyway...
waited another hour or two, they will open it at 7, you know.
So for all the foreigners in the audience, you know what you don't do after midnight in Hyde Park. Sheila, you get a point for that challenge, but Derek keeps the subject, and there are 5 seconds, Derek, on how it should be done, starting now.
How it should be done, monsieur et madame, is in the Serpentine swimming, because it's nothing like an alternative.
Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject, what I expect, and you start now.
What I expect is that if I stop talking, somebody will press a buzzer, and quite regardless of whether the challenge is right or wrong, you will award it to them without concert to the audience or listening to anybody who might have strayed into this theatre, whether they come from France, Belgium, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, or any other country.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, hesitation before Norway. He was going around the world. 35 seconds. What I expect, Derek, starting now.
What I always expect is that Clement Freud will prove to be a bad sportsman, which he invariably does, and he grumbles and moans and expresses discontent about the slightest and smallest of things. But I also expect that England would expect that every man should do his duty, which is rather like those jolly words of that nautical fellow, the fellow on top of the...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of fellow.
Right, Clement, you have the subject, what I expect. 12 seconds left, starting now.
What I expect.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
That was a bit quick, but he did hesitate, didn't he?
He did hesitate, but I was a bit tough on him last time. I'll be fair. I'll give him a point for a wrong challenge and tell him that he now has 11 seconds on what I expect, starting now.
Is that some carpetbagger from Afghanistan will approach me in Charlbert Street or even Primrose Hill, asking whether I would care to purchase 2 donkeys.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
I think it's highly unlikely that a carpetbagger from Afghanistan. Deviation.
I think it's highly unlikely, but it's not exactly Oh, no, what I expect. No, you wouldn't expect that, would you? Of course. What a very good challenge, Sheila. You have 1 second on what I expect.
Pretty well what I expected.
Starting now.
What I expect is a baby.
And Sheila Hancock, again speaking when the whistle went, has increased her lead at the end of the round. Oh, Peter, what a lovely subject for you now. Suction pumps in industry. Do you
Thanks
think
very much.
some way you can keep going without hesitation, deviation, or repetition on that, starting now?
Well, of all the suction pumps in the whole wide world, I would say that the suction pumps in industry are the most boring of all. If there is any listener who is addicted to this particular type of machine, I hope during the course of the next 60 seconds, or perhaps 50 by now, to dissuade you from pursuing this, because they really are execrable things. Now, if you go up to Lincolnshire, just outside Grimsby, a factory there in a green belt, if you go to the basement of it...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of if you go.
Yes, if you went. You did if you go more than once, Peter. And Clement gets a point for the correct challenge, and there are 25 seconds on suction pumps in industry, Clement, starting now.
What you must never do to a suction pump, in or without industry, is to blow into it, because it's likely to gum up the works quite hopelessly. Far better to get an arm, even a leg, and attach it.
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Repetition of even.
I never noticed the
That went pretty well, didn't it? You want to try it again to the audience?
Nobody else seemed to hear it. Did anybody else hear him say even twice? Clement Freud, there are 10 seconds on suction
Even
pumps in
industry,
industry, starting now.
Gathering up your suitcase and taking a train from Euston Station to the north, the industrial west is just to your left as you approach Manchester.
Well, Clement Freud kept going till the whistle went, absolutely captivated everybody with what he was saying, and he got some extra points. He's now equal, with Derek Nimmo in second place behind Sheila Hancock, and Peter Jones is trailing a little. Sheila, we come round to you again to start. The subject which we all need in this show, concentration. Can you talk on that for just a minute, starting now?
As you indeed said, Nick, you need concentration in this show more than any other that I have participated in, particularly if Kenneth Williams is on the panel, as he is apt to distract with all sorts...
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation.
I would agree, Derek. And you
carried
have 47 seconds, Derek, on concentration, starting now.
Indeed, you have to concentrate in this game, otherwise you might fumble or indeed stumble. And these are things that one has to...
Clement Freud.
Repetition of indeed.
No, he didn't say indeed before.
He started with indeed, and then he said, or indeed stumble.
Well done, Clement Freud. You have 42 seconds on concentration. I'm very pleased that the audience were concentrating then, because the chairman's slipped a little. And there are 42 seconds, concentration starting now.
If you were to get 26 bananas, 37 lemons, or indeed 48 oranges, and boil them down, they would be known as concentrated fruit. And the result is a liquid which you add water, invariably iced and sometimes aerated, a most refreshing summer drink which I would recommend wholeheartedly to everyone in this audience and all those listening at home by the seaside on their transistor radio.
Terribly dangerous, because the diabetics in the audience... Terribly dangerous.
Peter, we'll give you a point for a very amusing challenge and leave the subject with Clement Freud, and there are 15 and a half seconds left, Clement, starting now.
Going to the South Pole, it is customary to take with you some form of concentrated meat, known as blubber, which comes from whale, which will keep you alive or at least stave off hunger.
Sheila Hancock.
Is blubber concentrated meat? Isn't it just whale meat?
No, it's fat. Whale fat.
So it can be concentrated.
It can be concentrated, but you said blubber was concentrated meat.
No. Or blubber.
That's what Sheila challenged on, wasn't it?
Yes, you said
Very good
concentrated
challenge.
meat.
Very good challenge.
5 seconds, Sheila, on concentration, starting now.
There are many yoga exercises which improve your concentration.
At the end of that round, Sheila Hancock increased her lead. Derek, we're back with you. Oh, the nice subject here, the bits that get taken out. You can take that many ways, can't you? So will you take it any way you wish? You're writing it down, are you? Take it any way you wish for just a minute, starting now.
The bits that get taken out. What a lovely subject to be given on a hot day, such as it is, ce soir. Now, I'm sorry.
It isn't a hot day, ce soir.
You can't have a hot day in the evening.
That was for the benefit of the foreigners in the audience.
Well, I don't think the foreigners benefited very much from it, except to know that you don't know the
evening can be day.
soir and jour.
It's the same thing, oh love.
Peter Jones has got a point for a very good challenge, and he has 50 seconds on the bits that get taken out, Peter, starting now.
Je voudrais to explain that these girls who are sort of hanging about at stage doors, rather in smaller numbers than they in my youth, I remember, but they were there to be taken out, or possibly even taken in later. But the fact remains...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid there was, Peter. Very definite error there. 30 seconds,
Just
Clement.
an error or two? I mean, what's an error or two? I was trying to make it more comprehensible to the foreigners.
I thought you were about to say that when you take a bit out, you might err.
Oh, yes, I would never have thought of that, I'm pleased to say.
Clement Freud. You have 30 seconds on the bits that get taken out, starting now.
If you were a whale, one of the most likely bits to get taken out would be blubber, which need not necessarily be concentrated.
Peter Jones has challenged.
You can't refer to a whale's blubber as bits to be taken out. It is an enormous quantity. Most of the whale is blubber. So to just say bits as though it's an appendicitis and an adenoid or something is just ludicrous.
But he might only be taking...
I am trailing, you remember.
Peter, I will be generous and follow the guidance of the audience's applause, which says that there's your training. They will wish you to continue on the bits that get taken out, and there are 22 seconds left, starting now.
Most people believe that when a program is edited, some of the most hilarious parts of it...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Most people.
Yes, I'm afraid there's too
that's
many
right,
mosts,
yes.
Peter, so Derek has another point for a
trailing.
correct challenge, and he has 16 seconds on the bits that get taken out, Derek, starting now.
Dear old Maggie May, I remember taking her out in July the 15th, 1947. I was quite young, rather precocious, I suppose one might even say.
Peter Jones.
Hesitation. Before he said precocious, he hesitated.
I don't know what he was talking about, quite frankly. But he didn't actually...
Well, he was talking about being young in 1947. I overlooked that.
Give Peter Jones another point. Leave the subject with Derek Nimmo. He has 8 seconds on the bits that get taken out, Derek, starting now.
And this shrapnel got into my hand and rump. And they had to take the bits out rather slowly. I've been shot at by...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of rather. He was rather young before, now it's rather slowly.
Yes, so Clement, you have a good challenge, and 1.5 seconds left on the bits that get taken out, starting now.
The bits that get taken out.
Well, an interesting situation at the end of that round, which is also the end of the contest. Peter Jones came at the end with a flourish, but he still finished in 4th place, I'm sorry to say. He couldn't quite catch up Derek Nimmo, who finished in 3rd place, and Clement Freud, with those last 2 points, finished equal alongside Sheila Hancock, our 2 winners this week. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and will want to tune in again next time. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
we present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Alfred Marx in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And we're delighted to welcome back Alfred Marx to play the game with our three regular competitors. And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me. And this week, we will begin the show with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on the subject of hedonism for 60 seconds, starting now?
Hedonism, I think, roughly means somebody who is devoted to a life of pleasure. But of course, it would be possible to live this sort of existence if you really tried. Because inevitably there are tasks which do involve difficulties. Hedonism as opposed to head-offism, which wouldn't be living at all, would it? Because you wouldn't be able to breathe, not having a hooter. On the other hand, of course, there are Stoics who don't believe in hedonism and oppose it most vigorously, scourge themselves, and frequently go out in all weathers shouting the odds and saying, be hard, live. Oh, I said be twice, yes.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Repetition of course.
I agree with your challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge, and there are 21 seconds for you to continue with the subject of hedonism, starting now.
When Kenneth Williams was a pickpocket in a maternity home, one of his favorite subjects was an elderly spinster called Mavis Golightly, which he never did, strangely enough. Many men, women, children, and 2 Eskimos came to the private nursing home in which he practiced his craft.
Peter Jones has challenged just before the whistle.
Deviation. It's nothing to do with hedonism.
I can't see any connection either, Peter. I would agree, so you have a point for that. 1 second on hedonism, starting now.
It's people who are bent on...
Well, as you know, the whistle which Ian Messiter blows tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gets an extra point. Peter Jones got in just before the whistle, and he has got 2, and you're in the lead at the end of the round, Peter. Clement Freud, would you begin the next round? The subject is divisions. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
There are all sorts of divisions which you would find in the Football League, the House of Commons, and the Army, to name but a few. Beginning with the sporting classification, you have the 1st, 2nd, 3rd South, which at one time had a North, and the 4th Division, also the Southern Division, Scottish.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed, he ran out of divisions, didn't he?
No, I didn't. Well, yes. There are 2 divisions, and I couldn't think of another one.
I realise that, yes. You didn't run out, but you couldn't recall them. Yes. It was utterly boring as well, I thought.
Yes.
36 seconds are left with you, Peter, to talk on divisions, starting now.
Well, divisions are what divide the rich from the poor, and the male...
Alfred Marx has challenged.
Yes, it's not a challenge really under the headings of hesitation, deviation, or repetition.
Well, there's no other challenge is permitted.
No,
not
excuse me,
allowed.
I just want to draw the chairman's attention to I'm sitting next to Peter Jones, and probably unbeknown to me, he's standing on my foot. Thank you very much. Carry on, please. Sorry.
That would be a
Alfred,
foul,
when you
wouldn't
played
it?
the game more often, you'll realise that's only mild in comparison with some of the tactics they employ.
I see.
Yeah.
There's nothing else left to sit on, actually.
Well, as long as I'm not sitting on your buzzer, it'll be all right.
29 seconds left for divisions, Peter, starting now.
Well, I'm rather thrown by this ridiculous assertion that you made about me. I'm sitting down, as a matter of fact, not even standing.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. Your posture has nothing to do with the subject, I'm afraid.
Unfortunately, yes, you were thrown by it, so you had to go off about it, and you were not on division, so Kenneth has a correct challenge.
Right, I apologise, and you can have the next point I make.
Well, thanks very much.
So,
I hope I don't make any, just
Kenneth, there are 22 seconds for you on division, starting now.
Divisions are caused largely by philosophical attitudes which people take because of the upbringing, because of the way...
Clement Freud is challenged.
What's the matter with him?
He's not standing on my foot. He said because twice.
You said because
Well, I said because you come to me with naughty love. I mean, I felt like going into a ballad, you see.
Well, you actually repeated yourself on your way to your ballad. There are 14 seconds for you, Clement, on division starting now.
The Lion of Hyderabad was actually a man called Arthur Jones who joined the Pioneer Corps at the age of 19 and served in the 3rd Division of...
Deviation. There was no Lion of Hyderabad, therefore it's deviation. It's leading the public to think a whole host of things are completely untrue. They're going to go out of here tonight saying, do you know the Lion of Hyderabad? And they've never even met him.
I see that the Lion of Hyderabad was this chap who was in the Pioneer Corps as well.
Precisely. The whole thing is deviant.
Nothing to do with it. I mean, no. Kenneth has another point, and there are 5.5 seconds on division starting now.
The best divisions to do are long divisions, because you put the figures in, then you draw a bracket round and put your dividing figure outside. I've done that.
Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went, so he gained that extra point, and he's now, at the end of that round, in lead with Peter Jones, 1 ahead of Clement Freud and 3 ahead of Alfred Marx. And Peter, will you begin the next round? The subject is changing the wheel. Can you talk about changing the wheel in 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, it's something I always try to get somebody else to do for me, or a garage, or if the worst really does occur, then I would stand at the side of the road wiping a tear from my eye, hoping that some liberated woman would stop her powerful car, leap out, and do the change for me, and then afterwards take me home to her flat for a strengthening drink. Something, an invitation that I'm always open to accept. I don't know whether there are any listeners who may have motor cars, and if they do, on the occasion, pass me on the highway with one of these problems, like a burst tire, or even a gasket, or big end gone, whatever it is that's happened, then I should be most
Clement
grateful.
Freud is challenged.
Deviation. He's a long way away from changing a wheel. He's
onto gaskets and big ends and...
Yes, but I went off it a long time ago. What kept you?
14 seconds on changing the wheel with you, Clement, starting now.
I have also found difficulty doing this myself, and what I now do is lie under the car waiting for someone to come along and say, are you all right? When I say no, would you change my wheel?
Clement Freud then, speaking when the whistle went, gets the extra point, and he's now moved into the lead. Alfred Marx, will you begin the next round? The subject, the last time I blushed. You have 60 seconds, Alfred, starting now.
Strange as it may seem, the last time I blushed was on the train coming here this afternoon. The story goes back a little while because I am an acknowledged radio performer of some talent, I think. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. But people have said to me, we like you very much on the air, Alfred. The only thing is you do tend to speak rather rapidly. I will tell you what this has to do with the last time I blushed when I get to it. And so, bearing this in mind and wanting my career to remain in the ascendancy, I took myself off to a man in Harley Street who said to me, the only way to do this is to exercise, and he gave me the following hints. They are thus: that when I must speak very deliberately, slowly, and take deep breaths. And one of the exercises, pardon?
Clement Freud has challenged you. Clement.
It was repetition by the speech therapist who said,
What
when
is
I
speech-
speak, you speak.
Yes, there was a lot of you speak, I speak.
Yes. It's a great pity because it's a very funny story.
Yes, I know. Funny speech therapist. 13 seconds are left for you on the last time I blushed, Clement, starting now.
It was when a woman came up to me on a beach and untangled my dressing gown, which I was unhappily wearing, took off my slippers and said, are you Alfred Marx of radio and television fame?
Clement Freud, again speaking when the whistle went, increased his lead at the end of the round. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. The subject, Pompey. Would you talk about him for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now?
Well, I don't know an awful lot about Pompey. I know was part of the triumvirate composed of Caesar, Crassus, and himself. He married Julia, who was the daughter of the second bloke I mentioned, because I can't say it again or I'll be challenged, and fell out with him over these various policies which led to the defeat of Pharsala. Then he fled to Egypt, subject where he was done in by a member of his own entourage, or, if you prefer the term, soldier. A most dishonourable business, but of course all that lot were pretty shocking. That other one,
Alfred Marx's challenge you.
A hesitation, I think.
Yes, you must.
Well, I was just getting going, you know what I mean? I didn't challenge you, you'll notice, before when you were underway. You'll notice that.
Indeed.
Yes,
But he didn't try and say Caligula, which is...
No, that's true. It's most irregular.
Under pressure, it's impossible. There are 16 seconds for you, on Pompeii, starting now.
The most remarkable coincidence about this question is the fact that the speech therapist I went to, who I mentioned previously, name was Gnaeus Pompey. And Mr. Pompey said to me, wherever possible, you must say the following: Mary, breathing in between slowly.
Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, talisman. Can you talk about them for just a minute, starting now?
A talisman is something which you might find on your escutcheon or family shield, or even a lucky charm kept in your pocket of your suit or trousers, dressing gown, pyjamas, shirt, or wrapped in your handkerchief, where it says...
Alfred Marx is challenge.
Oh, indeed, hesitation.
Oh, indeed, yes.
Without doubt.
And 22 seconds on talisman, Alfred, starting now.
I remember a gentleman in the East End of London where I was bred and reared. He used to sell talisman at Christmas. And one day he came out with a small glass swan-like object which was hollow. There was a hole in the head and a hole in what was supposed to be the tail. And the secret of this was, I said hole twice, and nobody still has challenged me, and I'm going to go on until that whistle blows.
Well, they're being very generous to each other in this particular round. And, Alfred, you kept going again to the whistle, in spite of your hole in the head, or whatever it was. And you have increased your position. You're only 1 point behind our leader now, Clement Freud, but you've overtaken the other two. Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject, top marks. You get off his foot and talk about top marks. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I've got a lot of time for Harpo, Chico, even Zeppo. Certainly Groucho, the man who made that immortal remark, I wouldn't care to be a member of a club that would have me. I've misphrased that, unfortunately. However, I wouldn't care to belong to any club. No, I can't remember it. Well, I think I ought to go on the road for a couple of weeks and come in with it properly.
Kenneth Williams challenged you.
Well, I thought it was hesitation.
You thought it right, Kenneth. You have a point, and you have 40 seconds to continue on. Top marks, starting now.
Well, I've never really got any top marks, and it's most unfortunate because of all the people that have ever been gathered on any English stage, it is I that deserve them. All these awards and garlands should have been handed to me on a plate, but no one's appeared. Gold plate, silver plate, china...
Clement Freud.
All those plates.
Yes, there were far too many plates you served up there.
Well, I like a plate.
Yeah. And there are 17 seconds for you to continue with top marks, Clement, starting now.
I suppose you go to Highgate Cemetery and look for the grave of Karl Marx. You might have reason to believe that that is top marks, rather than Alfred or...
Clement Freud was again speaking when the whistle went, so he gained the extra point. Alfred, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is getting measured for a suit. Can you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
A very strange question in this day and age, because very few suits are made to measure these days, or bespoke tailoring, as it is called, rightly so. These days, one goes into a shop
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Well, these days came up 3 times.
Indeed, yes. Some of these days came up 3 times.
It's quite a good song, but...
Yeah, some of these days you're gonna miss me, honey.
But you can't keep bringing the refrain into just a minute, Kenneth. There are 47 seconds on getting measured for a suit with you, Kenneth, starting now.
This does happen to me occasionally, and I'm very often asked inside leg, and I always say, no, I'm outside right, but was sent off for handling the ball. On the other hand, I have been known to play very good games indoors, preferably table tennis. Often the ping-pong gives me a tremendous thrill.
Alfred Marks has challenged.
Oh, without any doubt whatsoever, deviation to the highest degree. What on earth has ping-pong got to do with being measured for a suit?
I quite agree with you. You don't have to sort of underline your case, Alfred.
Thank you.
I quite agree with you. 29 seconds for you, Alfred, on getting measured for a suit starting now.
I'm terribly embarrassed when the tailor says to me, which side do you dress? I usually say east side because the sun gets in my eyes when I dress on the other side. However, as I was saying previously, I'm not going to say it, obviously, because I should...
Well, he was going to say something that he'd said previously,
Absolutely
which,
right.
apart from being boring, is repetition.
Yes, you're quite right.
And there are 16 seconds for you, Peter, now on getting measured for a suit starting now.
It was Guy Middleton who, when asked which side you dress, said, just make it baggy at the knees. I remember that very well. Poor man died now. However, being measured for a suit has a number of hazards, particularly if you're not exactly a normal standard.
Peter Jones then kept going till the whistle went, gained the extra point, and he is still in third place with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, your turn to begin. The Plimsoll line. Can you talk about that? 60 seconds starting now.
The Plimsoll line is, of course, the thing which is drawn on the side of the ship to determine the displacement by law, over which you are not allowed to overburn.
Clement Freud is challenged.
It's not the displacement by law, it's the displacement by weight.
Oh, that's very subtle, isn't it? Yes, the law says that the displacement by weight must not go above the line. But I think that we have to be generous on grammatical errors. It's that the stress of keeping going under such pressure is that you have a point.
Oh, hurry up and get it out for...
Quibble about grammatical errors.
Kenneth, you have the subject, and you have 47 seconds on the Plimsoll line starting now.
And in this way, it is ensured that they don't shove a load of idiots down in the hold, and is a very complicated process. So complicated.
Peter Jones has challenged.
That was a very long buzz. What happened?
I buzzed with you, actually.
Oh, you did?
I came in on the tail
Well,
end.
what was your
well.
challenge?
Well, it's nothing to do with putting idiots down in the hold. That has absolutely nothing to do
You've
with
got to be an
it.
idiot to go
They
down
don't
in the
have-
hold. Have you seen it?
Peter Jones, you have a point, and there are 35 seconds on the Plimsoll line starting now.
35 seconds is a long time for me to talk about.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. The amount of time you have is not the subject, so you've deviated.
It's the whole raison d'etre.
It's nothing to do with the Plimsoll line. 35 seconds, and you dragged it all in, you great fool.
Said...
You heard the audience. You heard them. That's the majority verdict. We happen to live in a democracy. Those people all voted for me. You heard them.
You were browbeating them.
Yes,
you
and
were
I
pressurising them.
I'm all the way from Great Portland Street.
That is not the way to win the game, Kenneth.
It knew you give me half a chance, mate. I don't care how I win it.
Peter Jones went on to say the 35 seconds was not something...
Oh, just because he stands your Welsh rarebit round the corner, you think he...
33 seconds now on the Plimsoll line with you, Peter, starting now.
This line is put on all the ships. So...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Repetition, I've just made that point.
Yes, but not as clearly.
Rubbish.
But it doesn't matter whether you've made it, he's making it now. So there are 30 seconds for you, Peter, on the Plimsoll line starting now.
So that the casual observer and others can see whether the ship or boat, vessel of any kind...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of ship.
Yes, and there are 25 seconds for you, Clement, on the Plimsoll line starting now.
As Peter Jones and Kenneth Williams have, and Alfred Marks no doubt will say, this line is put on all the ships.
Alfred Marks has challenged.
Absolute deviation. I have no intention of speaking at all on this subject.
So he was being devious?
Absolutely.
Right, Alfred, you have 18 seconds to continue with the Plimsoll line starting now.
However, having been forced to do
Deviation, he's just said he's not going to speak on it. Now he's
Kenneth Williams, you have a point. You have 16 seconds on the Plimsoll line.
but I didn't say that whilst I had the question.
I'm sorry. No, you're not going to wriggle out of it that
But
way.
I didn't say it whilst I had the question.
If you had no intention, you could not have deserved a
I
point
happen to
for
be
it.
the biggest liar in London. That doesn't mean to say that I
Then if
cannot
you're the
appear on this
biggest-
show.
If you're the biggest liar in London, you should never have had the point.
I am leaving. I'm getting up and leaving.
All right, give it then. Give it to him.
I haven't been
Run
paid
out.
yet. I haven't been paid yet, you know.
Well, that's all right. We can
Do
stop
I get the subject or don't I get the subject?
No, Kenneth Williams gets the subject, and we'll
All
play
right,
the
then
game
I'll
with
stay.
three
You see what a liar I am?
16 seconds on the Plimsoll line, Kenneth, starting now.
Well, this was a very
Alfred Marks,
That wasn't a hesitation, then
Of
I'm
course it was
definitely
hesitation.
not
Well, you put me
right.
off.
Good.
You put me off the whole time.
You have 14 seconds on the Plimsoll line, Alfred, starting now.
My Plimsolls do not have a line. They merely have a welded sole to the welt. A lot of other Plimsolls don't have this sort of adhesive. I, on the other hand, prefer this as there's no possibility of a rupture between the various parts of the...
Wait a minute. Kenneth challenged before Alfred had his rupture.
Yes, because the subject is the Plimsoll line,
Yes,
which is
the
the one on
Plimsoll
the
line
ships.
of my Plimsolls, which I'm wearing at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's nothing.
Oh, no, he's made his point quite clearly. 1 second for you, Alfred, on the Plimsoll line, starting now. And
Hesitation.
What was it?
Hesitation.
Oh, shut up.
Hesitation. Definitely hesitation. You never come in.
Half a second, Alfred, on the Plimsoll line, starting now.
However...
Well, everybody got quite a lot of points on the Plimsoll line, including Alfred Marks, who got the extra one for speaking when the whistle went, and he's now in the lead at the end of that round.
Do your worst, bold, bad Kenneth.
Do you wish to leave now, Alfred?
I'll stay now, thank you, yes.
Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, the Trade Descriptions Act. Can you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
William Makepeace Trowbridge Thackeray, a 17th century savant.
Hesitation.
52 seconds, Kenneth, on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now.
The Trade Descriptions Act, I've never read, let alone acted it. But I believe it is a yacht.
Repetition.
Of what?
Ha.
Yes, I've got it. 45 seconds, Clement, on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now.
Having a guinea fowl to dinner and a new cook to prepare this in front of 8 guests, called the police and said...
Peter Jones is challenged.
You can't have a guinea fowl to dinner.
I thought the whole thing was very devious. I quite agree, Peter. You have 37
You can't
seconds
have
on
a
the
guinea
Trade
fowl to
Descriptions
dinner.
Act, starting now.
Some of my best friends are guinea
I've often
fowls.
thought.
Go on, Peter, quickly.
This is the act under which I've often...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Not when he was speaking. It was before. You have another point, Peter, and there are 31 seconds on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now.
I've often thought of suing the television companies because they describe what I often watch as entertainment.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of often.
No, I didn't repeat often.
No, you didn't repeat often, did he? No. All right, Peter, you have the point, and you have 25 seconds on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now.
Well, I think it's a very good thing that they have to describe what is in these jars of jam, like pectin, artificial colouring to enhance the natural flavour, and all kinds of monosodium glutamates and chemicals.
Clement Freud is challenged.
There's only one kind of monosodium glutamate.
No, there isn't. There's American and there's British.
Peter's made his point, and he has 10 seconds to continue on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now.
And I'm looking forward to the day when they'll have to apply this to the beer that we drink, and that'll be a sad day for the publicans.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of day.
Yes, I'm afraid there was, yes. And Clement, you've very cleverly again got in with only 1 second to go on the Trade Descriptions Act, starting now. And I have to tell you, alas, that we have no more time to play Just a Minute this week. So let me now give you the final score, and it was an extremely close contest. Kenneth Williams was only just in 4th place, behind Alfred Marks, who was in 2nd place behind 2 joint winners, Peter Jones and Clement Freud. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd. present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Andree Melly in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parson.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask them, as usual, to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me. And let's begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams.
What better? Lovely idea.
Well, Kenneth, a very good subject to start with, my undoing. So can you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, it covers a multitude of unpleasant pleasantries, depending, of course, on your proclivities. But I suppose foremost among the my undoing list would be the string of mess.
And Andree Melly has challenged.
Well, you can't have the my. I mean, it's not grammar, it's deviation.
It was a little bit devious.
Foremost among the my undoing list. Because it's my undoing, it's headed, you see.
I know, but it really was a little bit confused. Your grammar was at that time.
All right,
so Andree Melly had a correct challenge, so she gets a point for that, and she takes over the subject. There are 48 seconds, Andree, on my undoing, starting now.
My undoing is cabinet pudding, ginger sponge, spotted dick, and Eccles cakes, the kind you get in Liverpool at the pubs when you've had,
Derek has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, it was. Derek Nimmo, you have a correct challenge. You have 38 seconds. You take over the subject of my undoing, starting now.
My undoing is called a zip, which I much prefer to buttons. I find it much more useful in any way, because sometimes when you're out in the field, or perhaps behind a haystack, then you get your little brolly out and undo it. Because if you have what I call a ZAIP, rather than the other thing I said, if you see what I mean, probably you don't. No, you don't look a bit astonished, don't you? I'm so sorry. Did you not understand, madam? I do beg your pardon. But what I was talking about, I better go again. I'm so sorry. I was a bit worried about the audience. You couldn't answer. Hello?
deviation. It's gone right off.
God, he's gone right off, there's no doubt about that. Right off the subject and right off his rocker almost, I thought. Andree, again, I agree with your challenge, so you have a point for that, and you have 17 seconds on my undoing, starting now.
My undoing is challenging Kenneth Williams at the beginning of the show, because he can be so sweet and charming and lovely, and if you get on the wrong side of him...
Derek Nimmo has
Deviation is never sweet, charming and lovely.
Well, actually, I must be very fair. I've known Kenneth Williams to be sweet, charming, and lovely. So I...
Crawler.
I don't think that's very nice, Derek. After all, he's a very fine chairman. One of the very few...
I would like to... hello, this is Peter Jones speaking. I would like to disassociate myself from that remark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I disagree with Derek's challenge. So you have a point for an incorrect challenge. You keep the subject. 11 seconds, starting now.
Because if you stop his flow and rub him up the wrong way, it can get very tricky, you know, and a bit nasty. I mean, it's not his real nature.
Peter Jones, a challenge.
How can he be nasty if he's pleasant and lovely? Now, I want to tell you about my undoing, which is really something, and I've only got about 7 seconds. It was under the pier, the West Pier at Brighton, on Midsummer Eve. What?
I'm sorry, Peter. We'd love to hear about your undoing, but actually it was a wrong challenge.
Oh, I see.
Andree still has the subject.
You'll never hear about it now.
You almost told us about it. I think I stopped you just in time. 5 seconds, Andree. My undoing, starting now.
My undoing happened one night on Blackpool Pier. It was in the middle
That was our undoing.
Derek, I agree with your challenge. You have 2 seconds on my undoing, starting now.
My undoing is a rhinoceros.
The whistle that Ian Messiter blows so delicately for us tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that precise moment has an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo. At the end of that round, he has 3 points. Andree Melly has 4. Peter Jones and Kenneth Williams have yet to score. And Derek, will you begin the next round? Derek, the subject is tape. Would you talk for just a minute on tape, starting now?
Of course, there are many different kinds of tape, aren't there, if one applies one's tiny mind to it. I think, firstly, I suppose, of summer sports days with the sun shining and running in my little white shorts with plimsolls on my feet towards the winning tape. Ahead of the field I go, striding out with long, furry legs. And I use the word lightly, as they would like to have a peep of the mouth.
Kenneth Williams,
deviation, his legs aren't furry. They might be hairy, but they are not furry.
Kenneth, you've got the subject. You have 34 seconds on tape starting now.
In our minds, unquestionably, this is associated with recording the voice. Nowadays, if anyone says you have been taped, we all assume automatically that by the process of electronic communication or reproduction, depending, as I said before, on your proclivities.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition.
Of what?
Of something, because he said it before.
But he said it he said it in the other round, which he's allowed to do. He can actually have proclivities in each round if he wants to.
But it is boring if he always gives the same very boring speech each subject he gets. You know, he messed up the first one, didn't get a point. His own subject, you know. I don't know. I think he's overexcited tonight.
Oh! And I think he's getting all the rest of us rather overexcited. Kenneth, an incorrect challenge. You get a point for that. There are 14 seconds on tape starting now.
And the idea, of course, is that in court judgments...
Derek,
repetition of course.
Yes, you did say of course before.
He said it in the other round, though.
I said court.
Of course, you said.
Oh, of course, that's parts of speech, dear. We're all doing that. You're using and several times. You used and loads of times. I didn't pick you up on it, because, I mean, it's parts of speech. We're not going to bother with little things like that.
Derek, you have...
Sure, you all agree, don't you? That was just a part of speech, wasn't it? Yes, they all agreed.
Derek Nimmo has...
You all agree, don't you? Yes, thank you ever so much. Shut your mouth, you... Invited in.
Derek Nimmo has 11 seconds.
Why don't they have a bouncer here?
I'll tell you, if we had a bouncer here, you'd be the first person to be bounced
That's
out.
a nice... Thank you. Just kick me as you pass.
Derek Nimmo, you have 11 seconds on tape starting now.
I have some lovely sticky tape at home, which I go round and stick on my clematis because I like to know which plant is different to the other one, if you see what I mean. I have a lovely Montana Rubens.
Kenneth Holmes, a chap.
Deviation, you said different to, whereas it's different from. You cannot differ to someone, you differ from someone, the great nit.
You have half a second on tape, Kenneth, starting now.
Well, there's... Oh, I didn't get it out! I was going to say bias. Bias, what's that? Base bias. Bias.
At the end of that round, Derek Nimmo, Andree Melly and Kenneth Williams are equal in the lead, and Peter Jones is behind them. And Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject is credit cards. 60 seconds, credit cards, Peter, starting now.
Credit cards, I think, are a marvellous invention. They're durable, hard-wearing, tough. You can use them for endless things. I've got one under the leg of a wonky table. And I use it, another one, as a shoehorn. Because you can bend it.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, but he really...
It's hardly underway. Have you any gallantry at all?
He was finding it very difficult with all the animated reactions he was getting from you, decided to...
he was combing my hair during some of it.
I know. Peter, you have a point for an incorrect challenge. You have 42 seconds on credit cards starting now.
And I mended the bottom of a waste paper bin with another. Glued it and...
Hesitation.
That one
Yes,
I agree with,
definitely.
yes.
I agree
35
there,
seconds on credit cards with you, Andree, starting now.
These credit cards, I think they started in America. And the thing is that you don't have to have any money. Because I had a girlfriend there, and she opened her handbag, and there were hundreds of these things. She hadn't got a sou in the bank, and she said it's a disadvantage, as a matter of fact, because you can't get another credit card if you pay with cash. The thing is to go on getting more and more of these credit cards.
And Derek Nimmo challenge.
More and more.
Yes, there were too much there.
That's true.
Derek, 14 seconds on credit cards starting now.
I really do think they're an absolute abomination because they do give you a totally false feeling of security. You might not have a sou like Andree's dear friend in New York.
Andree Melly.
I thought he'd hesitated
No,
before
he
thought
didn't.
it was.
No, he was keeping going under great pressure.
know who you
there
are.
are 6 seconds on credit cards, Derek, starting now.
I have one sent to me from my bank, and when I take it into a shop, people very often say to me...
That's the problem of judging on hesitation, because it depends on the pace at which you're going. Right, Derek has taken the lead at the end of that round. He was speaking when the whistle went. He got the extra point. Andree's behind him, then Kenneth, and then Peter Jones. And Andree, your turn to begin. The subject, jelly babies. Can you talk about them for just a minute, starting now?
Jelly babies are not what they used to be. When I was young, they were innocent, lovely little sweeties. But some educationalists got the idea that small children should know about the facts of life. And where did they start? With jelly babies. Now there are blue boy ones and pink girl versions. You go to the shop and you try and find out how many of each you're going to get. That's what my daughter does. And if you really feel...
Deviation. If she's going to talk about this subject properly, I mean, she's either going to do it or sit and fall about laughing. I mean, let's decide what she's going to do. She's sitting there laughing. And I'm just about sick of this. I've come here to play this game seriously, and I'm just about fed up with people sitting there laughing. Just laughing about the whole time. I'm just about fed up with it. Look here. I've come a long way to play this game, and I think it's high time. Oh!
Right, Andree, what is your challenge, Kenneth?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether she was laughing or speaking seriously, and
She was speaking seriously with a laugh in her voice.
Oh, I
and
see.
she wasn't deviating from the subject, so she has a point for an incorrect challenge, and therefore she
Finally gone round the twist. I knew he would do one.
27 seconds left for jelly babies, starting now.
You get about 22 to the quarter. And watching them being poured out into that scales, oh, it's exciting. You're going to think of that sugary, lovely taste, all those awful things that go into it that are so bad for you. And you're going to go home and open that little packet the way I'm talking as if Nimmo would tell us.
Peter Jones, a challenge.
They don't put things in that are bad for you. It's quite erroneous to say that.
Well, I mean, I think you can say that sugar things are bad for your teeth. So it's in that sense, she probably was correct.
But she's spreading the idea all over the world through the medium of this radio that jelly babies are actually harmful. And
Well, I'm
I think
sorry for the
that's,
people who make jelly
mischievous.
babies, but they are harmful for people's teeth.
Well, I have an uncle in the jelly baby business, as a matter of fact. And I'm looking after his interests.
Well, I'm sorry, but she wasn't deviating from jelly babies, so she keeps the subject, and there are 13 seconds left, starting now.
Just one, perhaps two, taken once a day.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Repetition of two. We had two.
Yes,
before.
we had one and two before. Derek, a correct challenge, 9 seconds on jelly babies, starting now.
I am a tremendous aficionado of jelly babies. I like the green ones best. I don't know why. Perhaps from childhood longings. I used to write...
Peter Jones a challenge.
They don't make green ones. Andree Melly has told us they're pink and blue.
I must say, I've never seen a green jelly baby.
Yeah, they do.
No, have you seen a green jelly baby? Derek Nimmo has another point and 1.5 seconds on jelly babies, starting now.
I like chewing the heads off first.
Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. A nice historical subject for you that dear Mestas thought of, Nostradamus. Would you talk about him for just a minute, starting now?
Nostradamus, not to be confused, of course, with nostril, which is what you blow through. Oh, I've repeated it.
Andree's challenge.
Ha and a ha, repeat.
Ha ha ha, 3 ha.
That was just a facetious throwaway. Why, do you want the subject then?
No.
Well, you got it.
Well, we'll give you a point for a correct challenge. We'll leave the subject with Kenneth, who has Nostradamus, and 52 seconds, starting now.
Well, I understand he was some sort of fortune teller born in France. I think he was sometime known as Michael de Notre Dame, however you may choose to pronounce that, and became...
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Hesitation.
He was going a bit
Well, you
slow,
want the
must
subject, do you? Is that what you want? You want to get it away from me? Is that it?
No, I just want to win the game. You know how very competitive I am.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Well, all right, I'll do the same with Peter. I will do the same with you. I'll do the same with you as I did with Andree, and then it's fair to everybody. I'll give you a point for a correct challenge, but leave the subject with Kenneth. Kenneth! 36 seconds, starting now.
And he was physician in ordinary to the king, who was Charles IX, and his father, of course, was Henry, and his mother, de Medici, Catherine. Now, up to that period, you had a lot of trouble, of course, with that...
Of course. There you are.
What do you mean? What do you mean? This is a disgrace. Are you interrupting me?
Yes.
Yes.
You keep saying of course all the time.
Peter Jones, you have 22 seconds on Nostradamus, starting now.
Cast your mind back. I thought you were supposed to be allowed to get started.
You shouldn't enjoy other people's misfortunes
Oh,
so
I
much.
know.
It doesn't become you.
I was not... What about that sadist over there eating jelly babies' heads? Horrible.
me.
The cannibalistic jelly baby head eater has got 20 seconds on Nostradamus starting now.
His great prophecy of 1555 still resounds around the whole wide world, when he forecast all these holocausts that have fallen upon us and knows that are yet to come. Though you are here now, repent, because the Lord will be with you soon. Remember the words of Nostradamus as you go to this theatre tonight.
Well, Nostradamus.
Half the audience walked out during that.
I nearly went with them, actually.
I don't think they walked out, I think they passed out.
Well, that's what I mean.
And Derek certainly nearly passed out. But he did get an extra point, speaking when the whistle went, increased his lead, and Peter Jones, your turn to begin. Rude remarks. We've had quite a few of those in the programme so far today, but will you talk about them for just a minute if you can, starting now?
Well, who's your fat friend, I suppose, is one of the most memorable of them, but a lot depends on the circumstances in which these things are uttered. I can recall Hermione Gingold saying something quite devastating to me after a very unsuccessful television program in which I had participated with her, not cooperated, you understand. We didn't seem to have any mutual admiration at all. And when it was all over, I tapped on her dressing room door. She opened it and I said, I just popped in to say goodbye. And she said, I'm going to repeat it, goodbye, and closed the door. And that, in the circumstances...
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Well, even if, he did repeat it, didn't he?
Yes, and I said
it was a good anecdote. It was worth repeat. I think you should allow a bit of license there, Derek. I think that's very hard. Very hard. It's hard, isn't it? Very hard,
he couldn't have very well...
You know how keen Peter is to play the game properly.
Derek, you have a correct challenge, and 21 seconds on rude remarks starting now.
Oh, sucks to you, Nicholas Parsons, is one of my favourite rude remarks. And oh, blow off, I say, occasionally, to dear Kenny Williams. And it does make him smile, you know. He's got such a nice turn of wit, hasn't he, I think. Lovely, rosy cheeks. Nice mum, too, actually. She comes here sometimes. Oh, fiddle-dee-dee, what?
And Andree Melly.
Well, I mean, he was what do we call it? Not digressing, wasn't
Deviating.
he? Deviating.
Yes, he'd
That's
gone
what he
off
was
to Kenneth's mum instead of rude remarks.
Yes, he was.
Andree, you have a correct challenge and you have 5.5 seconds on rude remarks starting now.
Rude remarks are something that I would never stoop to. I mean, the company here do seem to occasionally say, right.
Well, Andree was speaking then when the whistle went. And Andree, your turn to begin. The subject, the hippopotamus. Can you talk about the hippopotamus starting now?
The hippopotamus is large, fat, with a very thick skin, like some could mention, and has short legs, tiny eyes, comes from Africa, and can be found in the zoo, most places which have them. It is supposed to be a kind of
Derek
endearing...
Nimmo.
Grammatically incorrect.
Grammatically incorrect. And as your challenge was grammatically incorrect, I'm not going to allow it and let Andree continue. For 42 seconds, Andree starting now.
Dr. Philip Fitzwilliam Herbert Smith has been doing a study on the love life of the hippopotamus.
Yes.
Yes, hesitation.
Well, I suppose you would call it that, yes.
Whatever you like, or repetition,
whatever you like. But we have 33 seconds for you, Derek, now on the hippopotamus starting now.
A hippopotamus is a pachydermatous animal, which means, as Andree has just said, it has a very thick skin. It is derived from the Greek word...
You've challenged.
Well, I just said it.
Yeah, but he didn't say it, you see. He's allowed to say it in the round if he wishes.
Yeah, well, he was showing off.
He does that all the time, so that's nothing new. He was trying to win, he was showing off, he was playing for points, playing to the audience, but he does all those things all the time in the programme, so he gets a point for an incorrect challenge, and there are 27 seconds. The hippopotamus, Derek, starting now.
Hippopotamus comes from the Grecian word for horse, hippo, and really means...
Andree.
Repetition, because he's showing off again.
Very good challenge. Very good challenge. So very good. You agree, don't you? Yes. Don't drop off.
He wasn't repeating. A repetition has got to be repetition of something which he has said.
Oh, don't be so pedantic, you dreary old fool, going on and on. Hold your finger out, get on with it. The whole thing's grinding to a halt. He's dropped off up there, look.
Andree was an incorrect challenge. There are 23 seconds on the hippopotamus Derek starting now.
I've got a lovely little book at home called Harry the Hippo. That's more down to her level. Jolly funny book. Lovely to read to my children.
Kenneth Williams.
2 books, I'm afraid.
Yes, there were.
Well,
Kenneth,
2
you have the
volumes,
subject.
actually.
You have 16 seconds on the hippopotamus starting now.
Then a portly hippopotamus came lumbering into view, of biggish size, with tear-stained eyes and a pinafore of blue. And the itty-bitty potamus was very glad she'd come, because she was his hippopotamum. What are you doing? What was going on? What was going on? What were you doing?
I wanted you to finish the rhyme. It was
There was
so
something
lovely.
going on behind my back. I saw at the corner of my eye.
Messiter, I said, don't blow your whistle. Take it out of your tonsils for a minute. I'm sure everybody wants to hear you finish the rhyme.
Oh.
I wish to encourage you all, in spite of the rude remarks that you make most of the time. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin again. The subject is hanging wallpaper. Can you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
This can be delightful, especially if the design is by someone as brilliant as William Morris. Surely a man who has created a hallmark, so to speak, in this particular field. I was once engaged in paper hanging with such a beautiful paper that I was almost in my work, so to speak, mesmerized.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Of 2 so to speaks.
Yes, I'm afraid so, yes.
well,
Derek, you have a point, a correct challenge, and there are 37 seconds on hanging wallpaper starting now.
I like using cold water paste best, you know, the old-fashioned kind. I don't like these new ones, the new...
Kenneth Williams.
2 likes. I like using cold water paper. I don't like.
Yes.
2 likes, you see. You said like twice. Do you understand what I mean, dear?
You wait.
Kenneth, you have 31 seconds on hanging wallpaper starting now.
And as I hung it, I thought of the Borisy, Florisy gowns that those ladies wore in Edwardian England. And I thought of that man who's buzzed me again.
Too thought of.
She's got
Yes.
a nerve, and she...
Yes, Andree, that's right. He did say that twice. And there are now 22 seconds for you on hanging wallpaper starting now.
I've just joined the Society for the Prevention of Hanging Wallpaper. How would you like to be played out?
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Well out.
Yes, she was trying to think of an expressive expression and failed. And there are 15 seconds on hanging wallpaper with you, Derek, starting now.
Actually, when you rarely apply those...
Kenneth Williams.
What is all this talk? The word of blood.
I know, it reminded me of you sometimes.
I think he's impersonating Clement Freud in that poor man's absence and taking the rise out of infirmity. Taking the rise, and that's dreadful. Very bad.
I thought he was much closer to
Why
your
doesn't he
end,
use a
Deborah.
proper voice like me?
Why isn't Nimmo a wrong
here?
challenge?
Yes.
You have 13 seconds on hanging wallpaper, Derek, starting now.
Oh, yes, dear, I love hanging wallpaper. Oh, it's such fun. It's marvellous. No idea what it's like. It's absolutely super. You go out and you hang it up. You always have so fantastic. Oh, yes.
Someone throw a bucket of water over him. He's hysterical. He'll frighten the children.
He's frightened them. He actually was trying to impersonate Kenneth Williams, which is almost impossible.
Absolutely. Well,
And that's why he got so frenetic. What's your challenge?
Mysteria.
Give Peter a bonus point. Leave the subject with Derek. Hanging wallpaper, Derek, starting now.
I put my trestle table down in the middle of the room and I get my brush, dip it into the water, get the glue out, put it on the back of the paper.
Derek Nimmo was then speaking when the whistle went. He got the extra point. I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute, so let me now give you the final score. Peter Jones finished in 4th place, which is unusual for him, behind Kenneth Williams, who was in a good 3rd place. Andree Melly was way up there with a lot of points in 2nd place, but Derek Nimmo this week excelled himself. He got no less than 20 points, a very high figure, and this week he is our winner, Derek Nimmo. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And once again, we have four of our keenest and our regular competitors of the game. So let us right away get on with the proceedings. And as usual, I will ask them if they can speak for just 1 minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me. And we'll begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, can you talk on the subject of the Naismith steam hammer drop forging process? Subject that Ian Mester's thought of to start the programme.
Hang on. Naismith, steam hammer.
The Naismith steam hammer drop forging process. It's absolutely genuine. We will have 60 seconds starting now.
Well, I'm so glad for the first time in all the years that I've played this programme that I've actually been given a subject that I know something about. The Naismith steam hammer drop forging process. The first Naismith came over, he was a Huguenot, came over from what's now the Netherlands, Jan. He arrived in Norfolk at the turn of the 17th century. And there he started in the wool trade, and his grandson went up to the potteries to Stoke-on-Trent, and there he met, first of all, Wealden and Asprey and Enoch Wood, the elder. And that was a tremendous influence on his life, because whilst working, making these lovely clay figures, he found the need for the drop forging process. And getting into his little house where he lived, very pretty, semi-detached it was, I remember, with green curtains, he one day drew up the plans for the Naismith steam hammer drop forging process, went along to his boss, come the morn, and said, "Here you are, what ho, look what I have for you." And if I may say, that was an absolute load of rubbish.
You don't need to emphasise the fact it was obvious to all of us, Derek. But nobody buzzed him. He kept going for 60 seconds, so he gets a bonus point for speaking when the whistle went. So at the end of that round, Derek Nimmo has a commanding lead of 2 over all the others, if only for the fact the others have yet to speak. So now we will move on to Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, nice to hear from you at last. And the subject, for you, sauciness. Talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I suppose it could be applied to these things you shove on food. On the other hand, of course, it could be the impertinence that's
Hancock challenge.
Hesitation.
I think it's very ungallant of you.
Well, I am ungallant.
Yes, you can say that again, all this women's rights stuff. It's disgraceful, isn't it?
So you get a point for a correct challenge, Sheila. You take over the subject of sauciness. 52 seconds left, starting now.
Sauciness usually means something rather cheeky, as for instance those postcards that you can buy at the seaside with rather rude things written underneath and fat ladies and men with red noses. Also, I suppose garters and black suspenders and things like that are considered slightly saucy. Kenneth Williams occasionally can be saucy, as when he accuses me.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Definition of saucy. The subject is sauciness.
Yes, you're allowed to repeat
true.
the subject on the card, Sheila, which is sauciness, but you repeated saucy. So Derek has a correct challenge, a point, and there are 26 seconds left. Derek, starting now.
I often like to go to Scotland for my holidays, particularly to Loch Ness. And you know, if you go there during the mating season, oh, Ness is very saucy.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Hello.
Is that your challenge?
Deviation. There is no mating season for the Loch Ness Monster.
Actually mentioned the Loch Ness Monster.
Yes,
I
he did.
imagine that
He did,
all
he
the locals up there were mating. And I don't think he was deviating from the subject on the card, so he keeps it and has 18 seconds for Sauciness starting now.
Those lovely postcards at Brighton of big fat men saying underneath, "When did you last see your little Willie?" I always liked them. I laughed. The drains flow with all...
Kenneth Williams has shut.
I don't believe this laughing till the drains flow.
No.
I think that's deviation, and if such an occurrence did happen, it would be most inhygienic.
Sanitary.
Yes,
I think you got the
unhygienic.
wrong word.
Insanitary, but
Laugh until the
unhygienic.
something else flows, till the tears flowed, he was trying to say. And he said the drains. Maybe his tear ducts are like drains, we don't know. But, Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. 7 seconds on Sauciness starting now.
It could be described as the proud man's contumely or the insolence of office. I myself have experienced.
Well, Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went, so he has gained a point. And at the end of an extra point for that, at the end of that round, Derek Nimmo has increased his lead. He is 2 ahead of Kenneth Williams. He's 3 ahead of Sheila Hancock, and Clement Freud, for once, has yet to score. But Clement Freud will now speak, having said hello, and the subject for him to speak on is my rights in this program. That's a very apt subject. Clement, so there's the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
My rights in this program are absolutely negligible. Every now and again, I'm allowed to go outside and help the audience who are sheltering under nothing at all not to come into the theatre, which is empty and waiting for their arrival. I'm very grateful to the BBC for allowing me to do this.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of B. BBC.
BBC. Derek, well, listen, 30 seconds on my rights in this program starting now.
My favourite right on this programme is to look across at old Freud and Kenneth sometimes smiling away.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
I'm C. Freud. I don't know who owns
That's another one of those impossible interpretations.
He is old.
So
He must
what's
be
your
old.
challenge, Clement?
Deviation?
Deviation? Deviation from old Freud?
I thought he said old Freud.
No, old Freud.
Oh,
That's
Old
deviation
Freud. I mean,
too,
do you
is
wish
not
me to
old.
put it to the audience whether they think you're old or not? All right. If you think Clement Freud is old, will you cheer? And if you don't think he's old, will you boo? And you all do it together now. They all think you're very young, Clement. So he was deviating, so you've got a point from the audience. You haven't got it from me. And there are 19 seconds on my rights in this program starting now.
My rights in this program are to make genuine and realistic observations and receive the total acknowledgement and contentment of these lovely people who have come here on this. Kenneth Williams sitting on my right, there is no one on my left, nods his head.
Freud, with some help and encouragement from the audience then, move forward. He's now in second place behind Derek Nimmo. Sheila, your turn to begin, and the subject is names. Would you talk on that simple one-word subject, 60 seconds, starting now?
This is a subject very close to my heart at the moment, as I am expecting a baby shortly and haven't the slightest idea what to call it. I am surrounded by those books that give you names from A to Z, and still I can't make up my mind. Any suggestions would be very welcome. The other thing...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Fred.
Thank you. It shall be Fred.
It shall be Fred. So give Derek a point for an amusing challenge which the audience enjoyed. Value for money. Sheila keeps the subject and continues on names. And Sheila, there are 40 seconds left, starting now.
I have the most terrible trouble remembering people's names when I'm introduced, and I heard a broadcast just recently where a man suggested that when you are given somebody's name, you should look at their face and try and link that said name with something about their appearance. trying to do it for this team, for instance. If one took Clement Freud, I suppose that name could be vaguely related to fried, and if you think of eggs done in that way, perhaps his eyes are remotely like that, and one might remember.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of remember.
Oh, you challenged her out of that one. There are 2 seconds for you on names, Clement, starting now.
Fred, William, Harry.
Clement Freud then got the point for speaking when the whistle went. Derek still in the lead, Clement in second place, and Kenneth and Sheila in third place. And Derek, your turn to begin. We're back with you. The subject, bangers. 60 seconds starting now.
I once had a 1938 Buick, which was my favorite banger that I've ever possessed, and it only did 8 miles to the gallon, which was a tremendous handicap. And when I first bought it, it developed a hole in the petrol tank on one-way day driving from Liverpool to...
Sheila Hancock.
One-way day.
One-way day? We have a one-way street, we have a one-way day. What's wrong?
Sheila, you have a point and you have 45 seconds on bangers starting now.
There is nothing nicer to eat than bangers and mash, particularly if they're cooked.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
There is.
You may think there is. Sheila doesn't, so she wasn't deviating from the subject, and she has 40 seconds to continue on bangers starting now.
On a barbecue. And to do this, you have to have your charcoal.
Clement Freud.
Repetition of have.
Oh, it's too mean to have.
Have to have, yes.
Yes, to have, but it's correct. All right, 35 seconds bangers with you, Clement, starting now.
In France, they call their bangers saucisson, and perhaps the best sausage of all is one made by pouring champagne onto the hot pig meat, which sort of drinks up the moisture and becomes absolutely delicious. You add mace, spices, pepper, salt, and with the fat taken from the pig,
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
2 pigs.
There were 2 pigs.
Pig meat, hyphen.
Well, you use the word pig, whether you hyphen or not, you use the word pig, and that is repetition, and there are 12 seconds on bangers with Derek starting now.
My favourite banger is made from the goat.
We've already been told his favourite banger is a Buick. Now he says they're made from the tail of the goat. I mean, now, which banger is he talking about?
A different kind.
The deviation here is profound, and I suggest the subject be given to me as the proper custodian.
I think, in view of the situation, it's probably the best thing we can do, as we haven't heard from you for a time, and you have 8 seconds on bangers, Kenneth, starting now.
The experience that stays in my memory inextricably connected with the aforesaid.
Kenneth, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is Tsar Nicholas I. I don't know how much you know about that particular Tsar. Could you talk about it for 60 seconds starting now?
Well, he was a great autocrat. There's little doubt about that. And some question as to his ascendancy because his brother, Constantine, was older. This gave rise to what was known as the Decembrist conspiracy. They tried, abortively, albeit, to do him in. But with a heavy hand and this awful sort of grandeur and militaristic stance, he was said to have invoked the Crimean War, and Prince Radetzky, who defended the guns when Cardigan rushed up and said, "Go on, get out of it, you load of fool with popinjays, all dressed up with his gold facings and great reveres they had on. Looked very nice, mind you. But of course the Light Brigade was wiped out, as you well know, and Victoria said afterwards, she said, that it should never have been allowed."
She said?
Yes.
Oh, you are rotten. You had 5 seconds to go.
Well, he keeps buzzing me when I've only got 5 seconds.
Yes, you're quite right, Sheila. He was very interesting, though, wasn't he? Very, very interesting. Give him a round of applause for being there. We now know Kenneth really knows his Russian history. So, but he did say, he said, she said, quite a lot. 4 seconds left, Sheila, starting now.
Tsar Nicholas I was, in fact, the first to be called Nicholas.
Sheila's now in second place, equal with Clement behind Derek Nimmo, and Clement, your turn to begin. The art of toleration. Can you talk on that subject, Clement, for 60 seconds, starting now?
I'm not sure that toleration is a word that I've come across. Tolerance, I would have said, the art of. But toleration possibly could mean a game played by 13 men on one side and 27 ladies on the other, involving a hard-backed black rubber disc, which is projected from one edge in a northeasterly direction towards the foothills of the Andes Mountains, where this sort of thing goes on to an extraordinary degree and is much appreciated, especially by camels and llamas who go there in the mating season after leaving Bangor-on-Dee and other holiday resorts in order to enjoy themselves on the Sunday League trip, which is such extremely good value at the moment. The art of
Sheila Hancock challenged.
He is speaking a load of rubbish, isn't he?
Sheila, you have a point and you have 6 seconds on the art of toleration, starting now.
I am going to be compassionate and assume that Ian Messiter can't help being illiterate. And
And as Sheila Hancock said, Ian Messiter can't help being illiterate. He blew his whistle as if to silence her. But she got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went. She's now equal in the lead alongside Derek Nimmo, with Clement 2 points behind and Kenneth Williams only 4 behind the two leaders. Sheila, your turn to begin, and the subject is understandings. 60 seconds starting now.
There is something slightly underhand about this word. One assumes it means something a little bit corrupt.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
2 somethings.
Yes.
Yes, there was. That was a sharp challenge. There are 50 seconds left for you, Kenneth, on understandings starting now.
You could say that a husband and wife have an understanding. You could say that also of friendships. And of course, diplomacy involves invariably certain understandings, like the NATO alliance. One's reaction to an announcement by the United States of America would be very much influenced by what we call the Atlantic understanding, which in our case, because we have a lingua franca.
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
Well, is he allowed to keep repeating understanding in the singular when it's understandings on the card?
No, he's not.
I think he is.
Will you challenge me for doing that?
Will you challenge her for doing that?
I think ludicrous. I think it's ludicrous because apart from the fact that, you know...
Well, we haven't got time for an academic conversation, actually. The point is that I gave a decision when...
I am here for one of the finer things of life, and I happen to be one of them. And I haven't...
What you've just said is...
These people have come a long way to see me, and I haven't spoken for ages. I've come all the way from Great Portland Street. I had to listen to this dreary rubbish from her.
Listen, you've been going with dreary rubbish for 40 seconds.
I don't care about that. And it's disgraceful. I'm not going to have it, I mean.
No, I must be fair, Kenneth. I gave right and right.
Fair? What would you know about fair? You've got no idea. You've got no idea. You keep on saying, shall we put it in the audience? Shall we ask the audience? That's all you do on this program. You know, what are the chairman, the fly to the moon. I could do it better and play the game.
Right, Kenneth, I'll sit down there.
Yes, they all agree.
Would you like to come and change places?
No, I'm not going to do it this week because my contract doesn't say.
An understanding.
Yes, exactly.
No, Kenneth, if I was to give in to you now, then I wouldn't be a responsible chairman.
You would have her again, are you?
Yes, because understanding...
Fasten your safety belts, dear.
Sheila, 20 seconds left, starting now.
I'd like to know how this word originated, actually. It must be probably...
Clement Freud.
Repetition of actually. She started off by saying actually.
I would like to know how this...
I would like to know how this word
Oh, no,
originated.
the previous time you began talking about it.
Clement Freud, you have 17 seconds on understanding starting now.
I have a tremendous understanding with Sheila Hancock. And the fact that she is going to have a baby very soon called Fred has nothing to do with this at all. In fact, her daughter, with whom I also have had understandings, inasmuch as we talked to each other on a previous occasion.
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went. He's now moved forward into second place alongside Derek Nimmo, but Sheila Hancock is still 1 point ahead in the lead. Derek Nimmo, it is back with you again, and the subject now is misunderstandings. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Gosh, isn't it easy in this world to have a misunderstanding? To know sometimes one wakes up on a cloudless day and looks up at the sun and thinks all's right with this world. And you go outside and you meet perhaps a passing bluebottle, and through that your whole day becomes one filled with stress and turmoil. Misunderstandings come up at every moment. You board a bus, and before you know, more misunderstandings take place. And you get so filled with despair, and tears well into your eyes. Misunderstandings everywhere. Is there any hope at all for mankind, you say? Oh, God, it is heaven. Please look down upon me. Give me some kind of assistance today.
Derek Nimmo, in one of his quieter moods, kept going for 60 seconds with lots of misunderstandings. And, it's very interesting how you're 1 ahead of Sheila, Sheila's 1 ahead of Clement, and Clement is 2 ahead of Kenneth, and Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Oh, Kenneth, a nice subject for you. My last date. Don't make eyes at that lovely doggy in the front row. Would you like to talk on my and I've just been told we have to finish at the end of this subject probably because we don't think we've got much more time. So keep going if you can for 60 seconds, starting now.
I presume by these it does mean calendar differences, so I would say the first one, because being 1066, William the Conqueror, my second date was, of course, the...
Derek Nimmo is challenged.
No, not really. I was going to say 66, but of course it wasn't any good, so I withdraw it. I could just see it, you see. I could see 2 6s, and I was thinking repetition of 6, and it's no good at all. I withdraw it. Very foolish challenge. I do apologise to everybody for wasting their time.
Kenneth Williams has got 52 seconds for my last date, starting now.
It would be 1453, which, as you all know, saw the collapse of that incredible city, Constantinople. They were fighting on the walls, and the blood, we are told, flowed down into the Bosphorus. Oh, that I could have been there and shared in this historic moment when the bell of Hagia Sophia rang out, warning all in Christendom of this appalling event.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
It warned all people irrespective of their religion.
What does that
all people want?
Well, just say your challenge again.
Well, he's right. I said warned all Christendom. He said it warned all people, regardless of their religion.
Oh, I see, yes. Oh, well, that's a very good challenge, isn't
Do
it?
not listen.
No, not that. There are 22 seconds for you, Clement, on my last date, starting now.
My last date came from Tunisia and was in a box marked Oh Charlie. And it had a fork of plastic in the middle. There were, in fact, 43 dates in the box, which was made of some light wooden material. And when I got to the last one, the stone stuck between 2 eye teeth.
Well, as I thought when we began that round, we probably would have only enough time for one more round. That has turned out to be true, and so now I will give you the final score. Kenneth Williams did very well. We heard a lot from him in spite of what he said. He finished in a very strong 4th position, just behind Sheila Hancock. But Sheila Hancock was only 1 point behind 2 joint winners this week, because Clement Freud's date brought him up to equal first place with Derek Nimmo. Clement Freud, Derek Nimmo. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Lloyd.